is recruiting very fast at a rate of 800 subjects per day, volunteers. Hopefully we can go to a higher number. It's very important that people continue to participate generously to be volunteers in this clinical trial. The projection is to complete recruitment of this trial somewhere very early in the month of February, and based on timelines of immunization, etc., maybe there we can have an outcome somewhere in the month of very late March or in April. The Sanofi trial program, which is the last program in our portfolio, will start phase 2b trial in the middle of February in a comparative trial to a messenger RNA vaccine. Maybe also on the progress part of things, we are working now experimentally testing sera for identification of immune correlates of protection. That's really super important, because if and when we have the data, somewhere in the middle of February is the projection currently, that identify an immune correlates of protection, that will dramatically accelerate potential approval of other vaccines, including the protein vaccines, particularly that from Sanofi, and vaccines from others, and of course across the world, provided people use readouts that are validated or cross-validated with the readouts that have been used. I do want to say a final point is we are running a clinical trial, a phase 3 trial in adolescents 12 to 18 years of age with the Moderna vaccine. It's a real challenge. It's been 4 weeks ongoing. We only recruited about 800 subjects in the trial. Remember, I just said earlier the Novavax vaccine is recruiting 800 subjects per day. Here we're talking about 800.
You're watching News Now from Fox, and it looks like the House is convening to vote on the impeachment of President Trump. So we will bring you all this feed raw and unfiltered right here on News Now from Fox.
Would show us how to serve as instruments of your pure judgment and peace. Divide our rhetoric from the light of your truth. Judge our partisan thoughts and convict us to attend to the common good. We have taken our obligations freely, but we remain beholden to your guidance. Hold us then accountable to your powerful word. In the strength of your holy name we pray. Amen.
Pursuant to Section 5A1A of House Resolution 8, the Journal of the Last Day's Proceedings is approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess for a period less than 15 minutes.
COVID-19 patients has strained resources and healthcare workers to the max, to the point where officials are warning they may actually have to ration care. You've heard us talk about this on this program. This is LA County hospitals are treating more than 8,000 COVID-19 patients, a growing number that is really at this point showing no signs of slowing. Dr. Beverly Tamby has been on the front line since the outset of the pandemic, treating patients at her East LA hospital, and she's with me today. And I know, look, I'm pulling you away from patients. So first of all, thank you for letting us talk to people, because you have been really
I'm doing okay. We're really doing our best to fight this pandemic. It's been a challenge. Most who are on the front lines share in that sentiment, but I'm doing okay.
All right, so much to ask you about. Have you been vaccinated yet?
Yes, actually, I got vaccinated. My first vaccine I got on the first day that it was offered at my hospital, and then I just recently got my second dose last week.
How did that go, that second dose?
It was fine. I mean, a little bit of soreness at the site of the injection, but otherwise I had no symptoms at all. So,
have you been sharing that with your fellow frontline workers and with your patients? Because we've been hearing, you and I both know in our community, there's been hesitancy and distrust in vaccinations and in specifically in.
All right, you're watching News Now from Fox. We are bringing you all a live feed from the Senate House as the impeachment debate continues. In just about 15 minutes, the session will reconvene. But right now, I want to bring you all a live picture from Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis, he is addressing the next priority groups to receive the coronavirus vaccine.
Reporting 38,000, I can tell you that is going to go up significantly as the shots are being reported. But we really believe it's important to put seniors first on this. You remember when we did the vaccine strategy, I did not follow the federal government saying to put healthy workers ahead of senior citizens. And the reason is because that's not consistent with the data that we have that shows the risk is more significant as you get older. And so we made the decision that obviously as the nursing home mission went from the very beginning, and that's continuing, as the healthcare workers who are dealing with COVID patients in particular were getting vaccinated, we made the decision that our next goal was 65 plus, seniors first in our broader community. Now we knew that there'd be way more demand than you could meet supply. But we would rather have there be more demand than supply than having the vaccine go bad like you've seen in other parts of the country. So the demand is robust. People are getting shots. We're going to continue to have more and more throughput as more vaccine comes. But I think it's important to note that we didn't follow that. We put seniors first. Now what is the federal government saying? They're saying to do 65 and up, just like Florida has done. So we've led the way on this, just like we led the way with opening schools, just like we led the way with putting people back to work, just like we led the way with protecting nursing homes at the outset of this. 65 plus is where we need to focus it. And if you look, to be close to 400,000, and we're still in the second week of January, and that really increasing at a big clip every day, we're just really excited. And I can tell you, being at all these events where we've seen people in Publix, we've seen people at I was at the Villages yesterday, drive-through test site or drive-through vaccine site. We wanted it to be golf carts, but it's too cold for their golf carts. So now they're doing their cars. But if it warms up, they'll do golf carts. So you're doing that. And, in the hospitals, people going in. And this is a sense of relief for a lot of people who have been waiting for this for a long time. And I can tell you, the sense of relief that a 73-year-old gets from this is not the same as if you vaccinate a 20-year-old healthy worker somewhere. So we're putting our parents first, our grandparents first. The momentum is building. We're going to continue to do it. Publix is a really, really big part of that. So again, those four counties, St. John's, Flagler, Volusia, and Collier, you're going to be able to make appointments starting today. And you're going to be able to have shots available in all these Publix starting tomorrow. 105 Publix overall so far in the program. They've got over 750 of these statewide. So believe me, as we get more vaccine, you want it to be in some other counties, you'll do it. Some people ask why you're doing some of the counties we're doing. There's some counties that have really big healthcare infrastructure. I mean, Miami-Dade, they're doing a lot. Orlando, Jacksonville has a big infrastructure, a lot of hospitals. We looked at counties that may be a little more medium-sized that have a lot of elderly people as a percentage. And so Hernando, Marion, Hernando, and Citrus, and then the Panhandle, and now these counties that we're doing now are really, I think, way to get it to the demographic we want and boost numbers in counties that maybe didn't have as much vaccine prevalent as you've seen in some of these other parts. But we're not stopping here. We view this as something that we're going to continue to do. So if you look at what's the picture in the state of Florida, we have over 70 community vaccination sites now with the state, the county health departments, a lot of county governments, the hospitals. Many hospitals are doing a really great job. They're doing thousands of shots a day in some of these big hospital systems. We also have some major vaccine sites like Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. That's a big testing site. Now we've started doing vaccines there, and we're doing over 1,000 a day there, and may look to expand it if we have more vaccine, and even kept it open for the national championship game. I had to close it a little earlier, but we didn't want it to go down, so we did that. And then we're also working with places of worship to be able to bring vaccine to folks. And so on Sunday, I was in Bay County, but we had it all over the state, partnering with a lot of churches to get senior citizens vaccinated. And so the decision's going to come now if the guidance does change about you can use. So right now, if I get 250,000 doses, they're holding another 250,000 for the booster shot. They're now saying, maybe you're not going to hold all that in advance because we're confident production is going to continue and you're going to be able to get the booster shot. So let me just say one thing. Whatever anyone says, Florida's committed to the booster shot. We think you need both shots for Pfizer and Moderna to reach the 95% efficacy. And so we are going to stand with that. We want people to get their booster shots. No one that's gotten an initial shot now, the booster shot has been held in reserve. If they then change the policy, I may get 500,000 shots. And so the question is, I'll have the boosters for everyone who's already had shots. Then we have to make sure in 4 weeks, if you're talking about Moderna, that you're able to make sure everyone has the boosters. I think that the production is going to be there, but we're going to work on exactly how we want to approach that. We'll make an announcement on that soon, but that'll be able to increase the shots that are happening every day. We almost hit 70,000 last Wednesday. We were over 60,000 a day 3 days last week. I'd imagine when these numbers are fully populated for this week, we'll be well over 60,000 both Monday and Tuesday. And if we put more, people like Publix at work, I think we can make that go even more. But when we get 250,000 shots in a week, that is definitely being eaten up at this point. There's no question about it. So that's going to be something that we're going to be looking at, and that's going to be something we're going to do. But our goal is putting seniors first. Our goal is to offer it to every senior who wants it. And for those who may not get an appointment with Publix today or may not be able to get in this round, hang in there. You're going to get it. This is like more demand than the iPhone, new iPhones. I mean, it's crazy how much demand. Like the phone lines will just melt, the websites, it's unbelievable. But just understand, when we're doing tens of thousands of seniors every day, that softens the demand. There'll be more and more availability. And so if it's not today, we're going to do it, and we're not going to stop. So if you haven't been able to get an appointment yet, if maybe you're in a county where the Publix isn't doing it yet, maybe just for whatever reason, hang in there. We're not stopping. We got 4.5 million seniors in Florida. We've done more seniors than anyone, but we've got a long way to keep going. And trust us, we are not going to stop until everyone gets it. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Anybody?
Governor Ron DeSantis, Alicia with Action News Jax. I know you mentioned that appointments start here in St. Johns County as well as the other 3 counties for Publix. I mean, how does that process work? What time do folks actually have to sign up to make sure that they get an appointment?
So the website is going to be live as we speak, and so that website is publix.com/COVID vaccine. There'll be a link there. You can go make it, and basically they're going to do appointments, I think, for as many days as they have vaccine that we've allocated to them. But we're going to keep allocating more. So as soon as we allocate more, when we get next week's shipment, then they're going to expand and they'll put it out some more. So we view, like we told them, we want to continue doing what works. And
When will there be more vaccination sites opening in minority underserved communities? Like you mentioned, the houses of worship. We saw that 7 places throughout the state. And I also believe it's
well, we've actually done, so we started in Pensacola the previous week. We expanded it across the state. We're going to continue to work. So in Bay County, we're going to do some follow-up. As we get more vaccine, be able to do it. So, it's important that not only we get it all across the state, but, getting it into the places of worship, you have people that are trustworthy, the pastors people trust, and they're able to help really, I think, organize a lot of folks to want to come. There's not 100% interest in the vaccine. And most people, I think, want it. But, even like you look at our hospitals, there's some hospital systems that had 75% of their nurses opt for it. There's others that had a third opt for it. And so, you just see, what we want to just say is, look, we want to make it available, and we don't want misinformation. I mean, if you just don't want to do it, fine. But, if people you trust have taken it, tell you it's good, then maybe that'll cause you to want to take it.
What is the
Well, I mean, the timeline is, we're getting more and more vaccine. I think it's just a matter of, we distributed a bunch of doses to that. If I had twice as many doses, we would have done twice as many sites. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Governor, any word on when this may happen in Duval County? We have lots of questions about that, Jacksonville being such a large area. So any word on when this may happen in Duval?
If we get enough vaccine, we want to expand it everywhere with the public's partnership. I think the thing that separates like a Duval from a Flagler or Collier is just Duval has a really strong hospital system. You got many hospitals. A lot of them have gotten doses. I know people have gotten shots at a bunch of these different places. And so some of the other counties that we've gone to a little bit more medium-sized, heavy senior population, we saw a gap there that we could really get the shots up right now. But yeah, our goal would be let's do it everywhere. Now they have 750 stores, so if we did it everywhere, you can do the math. You need hundreds of thousands of doses just to Publix they'd run out in 4 or 5 days on that clip that they're doing with 100 and 125. But we want to do it. We told them use it, get it done, and then we'll fight to get more. But we don't want it sitting on the shelves. So we've told a lot of hospitals have done well and they've asked for more. Others who still had some, they're working to get it out and get the shots in people's arms.
If you want to get a shot in St. Johns County at the store, you have to live in St. Johns County.
Yeah, no. And the reason is because, they have stores that are right on county borders, and those are their customers. What we are saying, though, and it may be a little bit here, but more so in the Panhandle, this really is for Floridians, though. I know, if you live in Mobile, Alabama, maybe you want to come to Pensacola. Well, we're doing it for Floridians, and that's how we want to do. Now, obviously, we have some people that only live here half the year. That's fine. But if you're kind of a permanent resident in these neighboring states, we do want it for Floridians. I don't think we're going to police the different county stuff, but obviously it's easier for folks to get to Publixes that are close to them.
Will it be coming to CVS or Walgreens and other pharmacies?
So, last question. So questions about CVS and Walgreens. So what CVS and Walgreens are doing are the nursing homes. So they were contracted with the federal government to do that. And let's just say that I have to put it where I know it's going to go quickly, and
House
I think
will be in
Publix,
order.
Has proven to be the best at
For
that.
purposes, the gentleman from
So
Massachusetts
I think what we would
seek
do
recognition.
if we had more vaccine dumped.
By the direction of the
More
Committee on
Publixes,
Rules, I call up House
as
Resolution
probably-
41 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 2, House Resolution 41. Resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order without intervention of any point of order to consider in the House House Resolution 24, impeaching Donald John Trump, President of the United States, for high crimes and misdemeanors. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the resolution and on any amendment thereto to adoption without intervening motion or demand for division of the question, except 2 hours of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary or their respective designees. Section 2. Until completion of proceedings enabled by the first section of this resolution, A, the chair may decline to entertain any intervening motion, resolution, question, or notice, and B, the chair may decline to entertain the question of consideration. 3. Upon adoption of this House Resolution 24, A, House Resolution 40 is hereby adopted, and B, no other resolution incidental to impeachment relating to House Resolution 24 shall be privileged during the remainder of the 117th Congress. Section 4. Section 5 of House Resolution 8, agreed to January 4, 2021, is amended by striking January 28, each place that it appears, and inserting February 11th.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 1 hour.
Mr. Speaker, for the purposes of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Oklahoma, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purposes of debate only. I ask unanimous consent that all members be given 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, today the Rules Committee, yesterday the Rules Committee met and reported a closed rule, House Resolution 41, providing for consideration of HRes 24, impeaching Donald John Trump, President of the United States for high crimes and misdemeanors. The rule provides 2 hours of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on the Judiciary. The rule also provides that upon adoption of H-Res 24, H-Res 40 is hereby adopted. Finally, the rule extends recess instructions, suspension authority, and same-day authority through February 11, 2021. Mr. Speaker, we are debating this historic measure at an actual crime scene, and we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the President of the United States. On Wednesday, January 6th, Congress gathered here to fulfill our constitutional duty, tallying the Electoral College victory of President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris after a free and fair election. This is largely a ceremonial role for the Congress, one that sends a message to the world that democracy in the United States persists. But at a rally just a mile and a half down Pennsylvania Avenue, Donald Trump and his allies were stoking the anger of a violent mob. A member of this very body proclaimed on that stage, "Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass." Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, called for trial by combat. Then Donald Trump told the crowd, "We're going to have to fight much harder. You will never take back our country with weakness." Even though, according to his own administration, that this election was the most secure in our history, Donald Trump repeated his big lie, that this election was an egregious assault on democracy. Vice President Pence, he said, was going to have to come through for us. Trump then told this mob to walk down to the Capitol. The signal was unmistakable. These thugs should stage a coup so Donald Trump can hang on to power. The people's will be damned. This beacon of democracy became the site of a vicious attack. Rioters chanted, "Hang Mike Pence," as a noose and gallows were built a stone's throw from the Capitol steps. Capitol police officers were beaten and sprayed with pepper spray. Attackers hunted down lawmakers to hold them hostage or worse. Staff barricaded doors. People sent text messages to their families to tell them they loved them. They thought they were saying goodbye, Mr. Speaker. This was not a protest. This was an insurrection. This was a well-organized attack on our country that was incited by Donald Trump. Domestic terrorists broke into the United States Capitol that day, and it's a miracle more people didn't die. As my colleagues and I were being evacuated to safety, I never, ever will forget what I saw when I looked into the eyes of those attackers right in the Speaker's lobby there. I saw evil, Mr. Speaker. Our country came under attack, not from a foreign nation, but from within. These were not protesters. These were not patriots. These were traitors. These were domestic terrorists, Mr. Speaker. And they were acting under the orders of Donald Trump. Now, some of my colleagues on the other side have suggested that we just move on from this horror. But to gloss over it would be an abdication of our duty. Others on the Republican side have talked about unity. But we can't have unity without truth and without accountability. And I'm not about to be lectured by people who just voted to overturn the results of a free and fair election. America was attacked, and we must respond, even when the cause of this violence resides at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Each of us took an oath last week. It wasn't to a party, and it wasn't to a person. We vowed to defend the Constitution. The actions of Donald Trump have called each of us to fulfill that oath today. I pray that we rise to this responsibility, because every moment Donald Trump is in the White House, our nation, our freedom is in danger. He must be held to account for the attack on our Capitol that he organized and he incited. I solemnly urge my colleagues to support this rule and the underlying article. The damage this building sustained can be repaired, Mr. Speaker. But if we don't hold Donald Trump accountable, the damage done to our nation could be irreversible. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserved. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I begin my formal remarks, I want to ask for God's blessing and protection on you, for my friend Mr. McGovern, for all who come to this chamber today to speak and to vote, for our wonderful staff that makes this possible, and most especially for the men and women of the Capitol Police and the other affiliated law enforcement agencies that are here to protect everybody and to make sure that this proceeding can go forward. With that, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the gentleman from Massachusetts, my very good friend, distinguished chairman of the Rules Committee, Mr. McGovern, for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, today is a sad day for all of us. For me personally, for the Rules Committee, for the entire House of Representatives, and most certainly for the American people. For the second time in 13 months, we're meeting to discuss the impeachment of the President of the United States. Our meeting today does not arise in a vacuum and comes at what I hope and pray is the end of a tumultuous period for our country. Less than 1 week ago, Congress met to certify the results of the 2020 presidential election. What started out as peaceful protest turned into a riot as an untold number of individuals stormed the Capitol building. 6 people died as a result of this mob, and it's only by the grace of God and the brave acts of the U.S. Capitol Police, the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police, the FBI, the ATF, and other responding agencies that there was not more bloodshed. Violent acts such as these have no place in our republic. These shocking and sobering events rest high on our minds today, as well they should. Certainly January 6, 2021 will live in my memory as the darkest day during my time of service as a member of this House. After these grave events, we as a nation and as an institution have an opportunity to come together. President Trump has conceded the 2020 election. Congress has certified the results of the election. And next Wednesday, President-elect Biden will be sworn in as the President of the United States. Congress and the nation can move forward knowing that the political process was completed as designed and that the constitutional framework that has governed our republic since 1789 held firm. But instead of moving forward as a unifying force, the majority in the House is choosing to divide us further. With only a week to go in his term, the majority is asking us to consider a resolution impeaching President Trump. And they do so knowing full well that even if the House passes this resolution, the Senate will not be able to begin considering these charges until after President Trump's term ends. Mr. Speaker, I can think of no action the House can take that's more likely to further divide the American people than the action we are contemplating today. Emotions are clearly running high, and political divisions have never been more apparent in my lifetime. We desperately need to seek a path forward, healing for the American people. So it's unfortunate that a path to support healing is not the path the majority's chosen today. Instead, the House is moving forward erratically with a truncated process that does not comport with the modern practice and that will give members no time to contemplate the serious course of action before us. In every modern impeachment inquiry, an investigation and committee action has preceded bringing an impeachment resolution to the floor. In part, this is to ensure that members have the full facts, the opportunity to engage expert witnesses, and have a chance to be heard. It also provides due process to the President of the United States. And again, in every modern impeachment inquiry, the President has been given an opportunity to be heard in some form or another. This is necessary in order to ensure that the American people have confidence in the procedures the House is following. It's also necessary not because of the President's inappropriate and reckless words are deserving of defense, but because the presidency itself demands due process in the impeachment proceedings. Unfortunately, the majority has chosen to race to the floor with a new article of impeachment, foregoing any investigation, any committee process, or any chance for members to fully contemplate this course of action before proceeding. Professor Jonathan Turley is correct when he called this a, quote, dangerous snap impeachment, an impeachment that effectively would go to a vote without the deliberation or inquiries of the traditional hearing. Professor Turley also noted that, quote, the damage caused by the rioters this week was enormous. However, it will pale in comparison to the damage from a new precedent of a snap impeachment, unquote. If the majority is seeking consensus, this is hardly the way to create it. The majority is failing to provide the House with an opportunity to review all the facts, which are still coming to light, to discuss all the evidence, to listen to scholars, to examine the witnesses, and to consider precedents. This is not the type of robust process we have followed for every modern impeachment, and the failure to do so does a great disservice to this institution and to this country. Mr. Speaker, I can think of nothing that will cause further division more than the path the majority is now taking. Rather than looking ahead to a new administration, the majority is again seeking to settle scores against the old one. Rather than seeking to heal America, they are seeking to divide us more deeply. And rather than following the appropriate processes the House has used in every modern impeachment, the majority is rushing to the floor, tripping all over themselves in their rush to impeach the president a second time. What's worse, though the majority seems to believe that this course of action is self-evident, and that's simply not the case. I have to tell them it's not. Members that have reviewed the same conduct and have come to dramatically different conclusions. Legal scholars like Professor Turley and Professor Alan Dershowitz, both of whom condemned the president's statements, believe that his statements are not impeachable. I know other scholars have different points of view. Given this difference of opinion, shouldn't we have a better process than this? Shouldn't we have a chance to examine witnesses, discuss the matter with legal scholars, and consider this in committee? On a matter as grave and consequential as impeachment, shouldn't we follow the same process we have used in every modern impeachment rather than rushing to the floor? On behalf of generations of Americans to come, we need to think more clearly about the consequences of our actions today. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, there is no reason to rush forward like this, other than the very obvious fact that there are only 7 days left until a new president takes office. But what's worse, as Professor Dershowitz has pointed out, because of the Senate's rules, the case cannot come to trial in the Senate until 1 p.m. on January the 20th, 1 hour after President Trump leaves office. This is an ill-advised course, in my opinion, Mr. Speaker. Even Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat, agrees. Senator Manchin is quoted this week as having said, quote, "I think this is so ill-advised for Joe Biden to be coming in, trying to heal the country, trying to be the president of all the people when we're going to be so divided and fighting again. Let the judicial system do its job," unquote. So what then is the point of the rush to impeach? We are coming off a horrific event that resulted in 6 deaths. We have an opportunity to move forward, but we cannot if the majority insists on bringing the country through the trauma of another impeachment. It will carry forward into the next president's term, ensuring that he will struggle to organize his administration. What's worse, it will continue to generate the bitterness so many of us have opposed. Why put us through that when we can't actually resolve this before the end of the president's term? Mr. Speaker, I think my colleagues in the majority need to think about this more soberly. We need to recognize we are following a flawed process. We need to recognize that people of goodwill can differ. We need to recognize that while the House may be done with this matter after today's vote, it will not be done for the country, it will not be done for the Senate, and it will not be done for the incoming Biden administration. The House's action today will only extend the division longer than necessary. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I would note that there are other remedies that can be pursued. The President is expected to face litigation over his role in last Wednesday's events. There will be criminal proceedings against the perpetrators, and I hope all of those who stormed the Capitol will be brought to justice. And some members have proposed an alternative procedure, censoring the president, which could garner significant bipartisan support in the House. I do not think impeachment is a wise course, Mr. Speaker. I would urge my friends in the majority to reconsider. There's still time to choose a different path, one that leads to reconciliation and hope for a better and brighter days. With that, I urge opposition to the rule, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record the powerful statement by Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who is the chair of the House Republican Caucus, entitled, "I will vote to impeach the President."
Without objection.
And I just want to be clear about one thing. If we vote to impeach the president today and we send it over to the Senate, there is nothing to prevent the Senate from taking it up immediately if Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell decides that he wants to proceed, number one. Number two, we all want to talk about unity. I can't think of anything that would unify this country more if there was a big bipartisan vote in favor of impeachment. Every second that this president remains in office is a danger to this country and to the world. We have no idea what he is capable of doing, whether he will pardon these terrorists, whether he will go to war. So I would urge all my colleagues on both sides to support this rule and the impeachment resolution. I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Chu.
He's recognized for 1 minute.
Last week, I hid in an office for hours, terrified to open the door because I did not know if a rioter was on the other side ready to attack, kidnap, or murder me. But my experiences were just the tip of the iceberg. The U.S. Capitol was targeted, besieged, and ransacked on January 6th by a murderous mob holding a noose for Vice President Pence and targeting Speaker Pelosi. Their rampage resulted in destruction and 5 people dead. We were attacked by terrorists, but this time the terrorists were radicalized right here in the United States. Worse, they were radicalized by the president, who intentionally lied to his supporters that the election was stolen and then told them when to come to D.C., where to protest, and who to direct their anger at. The need to remove this president could not be more urgent. He is too dangerous to remain in office. Donald Trump must be held accountable. He must be impeached.
Gentlewoman yields. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If we defeat the previous question, I'll offer an amendment to the rule to immediately bring up a resolution establishing a bipartisan national commission on the domestic terrorist attack on the United States Capitol. This proposed bipartisan commission will be tasked with examining and reporting upon the terror attack on our Capitol that occurred last Wednesday. The commission will be bipartisan in nature, modeled after the 9/11 Commission, and will fully be empowered to undertake a full investigation and make recommendations to the President and to Congress. I can think of no more appropriate path for Congress to follow than by ensuring a bipartisan commission reviews all evidence and reports back to us on this horrific event. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment in the record, along with extraneous material, immediately prior to the vote on the previous question. With that, I urge...
objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, I urge a no vote on the previous question. I yield 4 minutes to my good friend, Mr. Davis of Illinois, the ranking Republican member on House Administration, for a further explanation of this amendment.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I first want to thank the U.S. Capitol Police and the Sergeant-at-Arms employees who were here on the front lines protecting this Capitol last week during the unprecedented attack. It is imperative that we focus on ensuring a safe Inauguration Day, protecting members and staff during this time of increased threats, and making sure that our Capitol Police officers have the support that they need. We need to ensure that what we saw happen a week ago today never happens again. Yesterday, I introduced, along with Representatives Katko and Comer, a bill that would create a national commission on the domestic terrorist attack upon the United States Capitol. The bipartisan commission would consist of 10 members, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, appointed by the next president and by House and Senate leadership. This commission would be tasked with investigating the domestic terrorist attack that occurred in this building just a week ago. And it will provide us recommendations to prevent similar attacks from happening in the future. What we saw last week scared all of us who were here, but it also showed adversaries what it takes to take out a branch of government. When this commission is done with this investigation, it will submit a report to the President and to Congress detailing its findings and recommendations to ensure that no foreign or domestic adversary could accomplish what was done on January 6th. We need to ensure that we fully understand what took place last week and any and all issues that occurred during our response. Republicans and Democrats need to work together. We must unite to prevent any attacks like this from happening in the future, and we must protect this institution, not just for us, for the American people. That's why we should defeat the previous question so that we can establish this bipartisan commission to equip us with the information that we need to support our Capitol Police and the men and women who work in these buildings. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, the Majority Leader, Mr. Hoyer.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the chairman of the Rules Committee for yielding. I congratulate him for his efforts and that of the Rules Committee in acting swiftly. I appreciate the remarks of Mr. Cole, for whom I have great respect, but I disagree with his sense of a lack of urgency in action. I do agree with him of the consequences of our action. There are consequences to actions, and the actions of the President of the United States demand urgent, clear action by the Congress of the United States. The chairman of the committee introduced the remarks and put them in the record. But I want to reference the remarks of the chair of the Republican Conference, which is the analog to the Democratic caucus. It is all the Republicans elected to the Congress of the United States in the House of Representatives. And they elected Liz Cheney, the daughter of the Vice President of the United States, the former whip of this House, Dick Cheney, with whom I served in the 80s. Representative Cheney from Wyoming, a conservative Republican, said this: "The President of the United States summoned the mob, assembled the mob, and lit the flame of this attack." That is not some irresponsible new member of the Congress of the United States. This is the daughter of the former Republican whip and former Vice President of the United States of America. She knows of what she speaks. And she said this as well: "There has never been a greater betrayal by a President of the United States of his office and his oath of Constitution, to the Constitution." This is not, as Liz Cheney says, just some action. She characterizes it as the biggest betrayal of any President of the United States in our history. Mr. John Katko, not a backbench Republican who just got here and doesn't know what's going on. Mr. John Katko, who is the ranking Republican on the Homeland Security Committee, says this: "To allow the President of the United States to incite this attack without consequences is a direct threat to the future of democracy." This is not some backbencher on your side of the aisle, on their side of the aisle, Mr. Speaker. It reflects the sense of outrage, the sense of historic dissimilarity from the actions of any previous president. And then Mr. Adam Kinzinger, member to the NG Commerce Committee, a senior member from Illinois. So I have a member from Wyoming, a member from Illinois, and a member from New York. There will be others on this vote who will join them. And Mr. Kinzinger said this: if these actions, he hasn't had any hearings, he doesn't need any long, drawn-out consideration. If these actions are not worthy of impeachment, then what is an impeachable offense? There is no doubt in my mind that the President of the United States broke his oath and incited this insurrection. I tell my friend, Mr. Speaker, a gentleman for whom I have great respect, he is my friend, and I say that honestly, not just as rhetoric, as we say on this floor, because there's some that I don't consider friends, whose values I do not share. That is not Mr. Cole. We have a difference. Liz Cheney, John Katko, Adam Kinzinger, and other Republicans whom I have talked to within the last 24 hours believe this action is required. Now, let me say, I see the gentleman from Ohio is on the floor. He likes to say that we Democrats were elected and the first thing we wanted to do was impeach this president. And he's shaking his head in agreement because, like the President of the United States, he denies the facts. Trump-like. Fake news. December 6, 2017, Mr. Green, whom I'm going to refer to, offered a motion because he saw the danger that confronted our country. And he filed a resolution of impeachment. And on December 6, 2017, we had a vote on that. And the majority of Democrats voted no. Actually, they voted yes to table, so that we did not proceed in 2017. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, thought, however, the next year that there was still a danger to our country. Some of us shared that view, but we were not confident that the case could be made or that the transactions that had proceeded would lead to conviction. So on January 19th of 2018, we had a motion to table Mr. Green's resolution. And the majority of Democrats voted to table that resolution. What a rush to judgment. And then on July 17th, 2019, 9 days before the call to Ukraine to get the Ukrainian leader to act on the political behalf of the President of the United States and withheld money to defend the Ukrainian people from Russian involvement and offered that as a bribe. And on July 17th, the majority of Democrats voted to table that resolution. So, Mr. Speaker, there was no rush to judgment. And then that call to which I just referred was on July 26th, 9 days later. I call that the aha moment. Yes, I knew what I thought, but that was proof. And the gentleman, some gentlemen have lamented that we didn't know the whistleblower, because after all, if we knew the whistleblower, we can intimidate everybody else from coming forward. And this president has done everything he can to intimidate whistleblowers, people who came forward and told the truth. And we had witness after witness after witness who confirmed what the whistleblower brought to our attention. So the reason I rise today, and I'm going to speak on the resolution itself at some later time, is to recognize the contributions that Al Green of Texas has made to getting us to this place. And I just want to, I'm not going to read all the resolution, but I want to read some excerpts from the resolution he has introduced. We won't be considering his resolution. We'll be considering Mr. Cicilline and over 200 others who have signed on to the resolution. Mr. Green had a resolution been introduced, resolved that Donald Trump, President of the United States, is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and the following articles of impeachment be exhibited in the Senate. Article 1 says, in his conduct with the President of the, in his conduct while President of the United States, unmindful of the high duties of his high office and dignity and proprieties thereof, and of the harmony and courtesies necessary for stability, to which my friend spoke, the gentleman from Oklahoma, John Trump, in violation of his constitutional and oath faithfully to execute the office of President, has harmed the society of the United States, brought shame and dishonor to the office of the President of the United States, sowing discord among the people of the United States by weaponizing hate for political gain. He went on to say on January 6, 2021, in a speech at the National Mall, President Donald Trump weaponized the hate and that resulted in violence, the deaths of multiple people, an assault on democracy, and an insurrection against the Capitol of the United States of America by inciting a mob. Who said that? Liz Cheney said it, and Al Green said it. Infected with white supremacists, carrying a rebel flag, erecting a gallows structure with a noose, wearing shirts and hateful messages, such as Camp Auschwitz, work brings freedom, and MAGA Civil War, January 6, 2021. MAGA Civil War. They had the hats on of the army of MAGA, which I refer to as Make America Grieve Again. We grieved at Fort Sumter. We grieved on December 7th, 1941, and we grieved on 9/11. And yes, we grieved on January 6th of this year. He goes on to say what the president told this mob that Liz Cheney said was recruited by the President of the United States. And I quote, this is the president talking to this mob. All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by a bold and radical left Democrats, like the Secretary of State in Georgia and the governor of Georgia, which is what they are doing, and stolen by the fake news media, inciting, riling up, creating anger with the fake news and lies that the President of the United States said to these folks. That is what they have done and what they are doing, the President continued. We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. And so what did they do? Incited by this president, as Liz Cheney said, as John Katko said, as Adam Kinzinger said, and frankly, what Secretary Chao acted upon, and what the Secretary of Homeland Security acted upon, and what so many others in the administration have acted upon. Disgusted, dismayed, and disheartened by what their president had done. They got out. They quit. The president further emboldened them, saying, this is the green resolution. We're not considering it, but it is the green resolution. The president further emboldened them, saying, you will never take back our country with weakness. We had a display of non-weakness, criminal, insurrection-like conduct, recruited by and deployed by the President of the United States to come to this Capitol and stop the steal. The steal, of course, was we assembled accepting what all the courts that considered it said was a fair and accurate election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as President and Vice President of the United States. After his National Mall speech, a mob of his supporters proceeded to the Capitol complex. We know that. And so Mr. Green's resolution ends with, wherefore, to prevent national harm to our society, Donald John Trump, by such conduct, warrants immediate impeachment trial and removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States Constitution and the 14th Amendment. So in conclusion, Mr. Green is going to speak after me, but in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, let me tell my friend Mr. Cole, I've been here some time. He has as well. I've served with Ronald Reagan, with George H.W. Bush, and George Bush. I had respect for all of those presidents. They cared about our country, they honored our Constitution, and they executed the duties of their office consistent with the Constitution and laws of our country. That is not true of this president. And therefore, he ought to be removed. And we have that opportunity to do so. Is there little time left? Yes. But it is never too late to do the right thing. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Maryland yields. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Speaker, at this point, I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, my good friend, Mr. Green.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had tears to well in my eyes as I heard Mr. Hoyer, and I know that hearts are hurting. It's a very sad time in the history of our country. No one is celebrating. No one wants to see this occur. I was at the Rules Committee by way of Zoom. I was there for the entire hearing. Those members on the other side, this is something that they understand and they take seriously. Regardless as to what's said, I could sense that they're hurting too. So I just want to thank everyone for all that has happened and the appreciation that's been shown. And I want to say that the healing that we talk about, that has to begin. May I have just 30 seconds?
I yield the gentleman 30 seconds.
Gentleman has additional 30 seconds.
Thank you. The healing, it has to start with some of these people who were there initially, who helped to lay this foundation, 110 people. I want to recognize Maxine Waters, Congresswoman. A lot of them were threatened. Their lives were disrupted. And if I may, with unanimous consent, I'd just like to insert their names in the record.
Without objection.
I thank you, and may God bless our country as we go forward.
Gentleman from Texas yields. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my good friend, distinguished Republican member, our leader of the Budget Committee, Mr. Smith of Missouri.
Gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If we defeat the previous question, we will amend the rule to immediately bring up the bill establishing a bipartisan national commission on the domestic terror attack of the United States Capitol. This has been a devastating week for our nation. Just last week, we stood right here in this very chamber while a violent mob laid siege to the seat of American democracy. It is vital we get the facts on what went wrong last week, why the security apparatus failed, and how we can ensure it never happens again. Less than 50 feet from where we stand in this room, a young lady lost her life through those doors. Through those doors. I was in this chamber when those gunshots rang. That is real stuff. That should never happen in the people's house. For the first time, can the House Democrats and the Speaker of the House put the people before politics? Please put the people before politics. At a time when our nation is more divided than ever before, let's put people before politics. President Trump will be leaving in 7 days. Let's try to heal this nation. Let's listen to the American people. This is the people's house. Let's operate for the people. This country is hurting. The people are hurting. Our colleagues are hurting. This is a reckless impeachment. This will only bring up the hate and fire more than ever before. Have a conscience. Put the people before politics.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, let me remind all of my colleagues that what happened on Wednesday would not have happened if it weren't for the occupant in the White House. And if we want to put the people first, we all ought to vote to impeach him and remove him from office as soon as possible. With that, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Brownlee.
Gentlewoman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today is a defining moment in our history. Congress was attacked by a mob directed by the President of the United States. It was a horrible, terrifying situation, but we all know deep in our hearts that it could have been much, much worse. We simply cannot let it stand. We cannot let it stand for the very soul of our democracy. We cannot let the President of the United States leave office without acting. We are the oldest constitutional republic in the world, and our Capitol is the sacred symbol of our great democracy. To my colleagues across the aisle, I appeal to your sense of service and duty to our nation and to the oath we all swore to uphold. Before we are Democrats and Republicans, we are Americans. Let us come together to fulfill our oath by voting for the resolution before us and by defending, preserving, and honoring our democracy. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to one of our new members, distinguished gentlelady from South Carolina, Ms. Mace, and note that this is her first speech on the House floor.
Gentlewoman from South Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is not the reason why I wanted to give my first speech in our chambers, in our hallowed halls. This is not what I wanted to do in my first week in office. But after the violent events of last week, watching and witnessing how heartbreaking this was, thank God I sent my kids home on Monday morning because I was worried about the rhetoric leading up to the events and to the rally on January 6th, the violence that could transpire. Not only were our lives in danger, but if my kids were here, their lives would have been in danger too, the two most precious people in my life. Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States, the U.S. House of Representatives has every right to impeach the President of the United States. But what we're doing today, rushing this impeachment in an hour or 2 hour long debate on the floor of this chamber, bypassing judiciary, poses great questions about the constitutionality of this process. I believe we need to hold the President accountable. I hold him accountable for the events that transpired, for the attack on our Capitol last Wednesday. I also believe that we need to hold accountable every single person, even members of Congress, if they contributed to the violence that transpired here. But today I'm asking my colleagues to remember the words of the legendary, the great leader in this country, Dr. Martin Luther King, who once said, "The time is always right to do what is right." And if we're serious about healing the divisions in this country, Republicans and Democrats need to acknowledge this is not the first day of violence we've seen. We've seen violence across our country for the last 9 months. And we need to recognize, number one, that our words have consequences, that there is violence on both sides of the aisle. We've contributed to it. We need to take responsibility for our words and our actions. We need to acknowledge there is a problem, take responsibility for it, and stop being part of the problem and start being part of the solution. God bless every member in the chamber today, and God bless the United States of America. I yield back. Thank you.
The gentlewoman yields. Gentleman from Oklahoma Reserve. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Vermont, Mr. Welsh.
Gentleman from Vermont is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, our government is founded on the principle all power flows from the people. Donald Trump challenged this principle in 2 ways: deceit and violence. The deceit is repeated and baseless assertion of an electoral fraud. The violence, the attack on the United States Capitol on January 6th. The mob was assembled by Donald Trump, incited by Donald Trump, and in service of Donald Trump's effort to overturn, through violence, what he lost at the voting booth. The violent mob breached the Capitol, killed and injured Capitol Police, destroyed property, threatened the Vice President, members of Congress, and staff, all to obstruct the peaceful transfer of power. If we want unity, we must have accountability. So the question before this Congress: will Congress condone through acquiescence or condemn through impeachment Donald Trump's violent acts to overturn the election?
Gentleman's
Congress
time has
must
expired.
impeach.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is
back.
reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished Republican leader of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan of Ohio.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, in his opening remarks, the Democrat chair of the Rules Committee said that Republicans last week voted to overturn the results of an election. Guess who the first objector was on January 6, 2017? First objector, the Democrat chair of the Rules Committee. And guess which state he objected to? Alabama. The very first state called, Alabama. President Trump, I think, won Alabama by like 80 points. Actually, he won it by 30 points. They can object to Alabama in 2017, but tell us we can't object to Pennsylvania in 2021? Pennsylvania, where the state Supreme Court just unilaterally extended the election to Friday? Pennsylvania, where the Secretary of State unilaterally changed the rules, went around the legislature in unconstitutional fashion? Pennsylvania, where county clerks in some counties, and you can imagine which counties they were, let people fix their ballots against the law, cure their ballots, their mail-in ballots, direct violation of the law. And they tell us we tried to overturn the election. Guess who the second objector was in 2017? The individual managing the impeachment for the Democrats. Americans are tired of the double standard. They are so tired of it. Democrats object to more states in 2017 than Republicans did last week, but somehow we're wrong. Democrats can raise bail for rioters and looters this summer, but somehow when Republicans condemn all the violence this summer, the violence last week, somehow we're wrong. And Democrats can investigate the President of the United States, as Mr. Hoyer went through, try to impeach him, investigate him for 4 years, but will not look at an election that 80 million Americans, half the electorate, 80 million, Republicans and Democrats have their doubts about. I said this last night. I do not know where all this goes, and this is frightening for the country. We should defeat this rule, and we should defeat the impeachment resolution when it comes up.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Oklahoma Reserve. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, some of us objected 4 years ago as a protest vote to raise concerns about what all of our intelligence agencies had stated clearly, that Russia interfered in our election. But what the gentleman fails to acknowledge is that we all acknowledged that Donald Trump was the president the day after the election. Hillary Clinton conceded the day after the election. None of us push conspiracy theories like some of my friends on the other side of the aisle have been doing in this president, that somehow the president won in a landslide. Give me a break. You know, yesterday in the Rules Committee, I asked the gentleman from Ohio if he would just say 5 simple words. And if he was talking about healing. I said the 5 simple words that you could say that would help heal this nation are that the election was not stolen. That's it. 5 simple words. He refused. He said he never said the election was stolen. Well, the evidence shows otherwise. And let me quote from this Dana Milbank piece entitled, "5 Pesky Little Words Keep Stumping Jim Jordan." And Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is this. This Capitol was stormed. People died because of the big lies that were being told by this president and by too many people on the other side of the aisle. Enough. People should be outraged as to what happened. It was unforgivable, unconscionable. And coming up on this floor and talking about whataboutism and trying to make these false equivalencies, give me a break. The President of the United States instigated an attempted coup in this country. People died. Everybody should be outraged, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. If this is not an impeachable offense, I don't know what the hell is. This president is not fit to remain in office. With that, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio.
The gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman. This was not a one-off. It was a long time coming. It was a part of a plan to perpetuate Trump in office. Trump's campaign strategy was the election, the only way we can lose is if it's stolen. If it's stolen, it's fake, it's stolen, repeated by many of his fellow travelers on that side more than 150 times by Trump over the summer. Then they litigated to disqualify voters. That didn't work. Then they litigated to throw out ballots. Well, that didn't work. Then they attempted to delay the count and flip state legislatures. Well, that didn't work. Last ditch, the president called down to Georgia and said, "Can't you find me more votes?" And then one last desperate plea: stop the January 6th certification. And the president talked about that on September 26th. He said, "You know, if it goes to Congress, there's 1 vote per state, and we have an advantage." So I think this was part of a plan to disrupt the Electoral College of the United States. Giuliani, trial by combat. Trump, never take back our country with weakness.
Time's expired.
You have to show
Gentleman
strength.
from Massachusetts
You have to be strong.
reserves.
If you
The
don't
gentleman
fight like
from
hell, you're not gonna
Oklahoma
have a
is
country
recognized. The
anymore.
gentleman will
And then
suspend.
he said, "We love
The gentleman is no longer recognized. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my good friend, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Reschenthaler, new member of the Rules Committee.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm deeply troubled by last week's attack on our Capitol, and I pray for the families of Officer Sicknick and Officer Liebengood. As I have been saying all summer long, violence and rioting has no place in America, and the criminals responsible for last week's rioting must be brought to justice. At a time when our nation is still healing, we must seek out issues to work on that unite us, rather than issues that further divide us. I was greatly encouraged to see our country unite in condemnation of last week's lawlessness and the rioting. I am further encouraged that despite my Democrat colleagues' claims to the contrary, President Trump is committed to a peaceful and uninterrupted transfer of power. But that's not good enough for my colleagues across the aisle. With just 7 days left in President Trump's term, they are fast-tracking impeachment proceedings, a move which will no doubt further divide an already fractured nation. Even House Democrats' last impeachment effort, which was rushed through in record time, at the very least that had expert input, depositions, hearings, and deliberation. This latest attempt at impeachment ignores all precedent and ignores all due process. And it cannot be voted on in the Senate before Joe Biden is sworn into office. I'm also very concerned by the charge against the president of quote-unquote incitement of insurrection. At his rally, President Trump urged attendees to quote-unquote Peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. There was no mention of violence, let alone calls to action. Look, I prosecuted terrorists in the Navy. I was a defense attorney in the Navy JAG Corps. I was a district judge. Just pull up the criminal statute. Look at the criminal code. President Trump's words would not even meet the definition of incitement under criminal statutes. The measure before us today sets a dangerous precedent whereby political parties can justify impeachment simply because they do not agree with the president. I would therefore urge my colleagues across the aisle to just take a step back, let cooler heads prevail, and consider how the actions we're taking here today will alter the course of history, will lower an already low bar of impeachment for all future presidencies. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, when my friends talk about the president being committed to a peaceful transition, I just point to what happened on Wednesday when his words launched a violent attack against this Capitol, where 5 people lost their lives and many more were injured. So give me a break. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson-Lee.
I thank you. Contrary to my good friend's words, the President of the United States is an insurrectionist. He led an insurrection against the United States of America. Prior to the January 6th attack by violent domestic terrorists, the President spoke to the crowd for 1 hour, and these were his words. These were his words, which is that we cannot take the nation back. We have to take the nation back with strength, and you must go and do that. Those were the paraphrase of his words. The President provoked these domestic terrorists with words, with actions, and conduct that portray and have contempt and hostility to the national value of equal justice under the law. Telling domestic terrorists, nearly all of them were white supremacists, many of them, who support him politically, who stormed the Capitol to derail Congress from completing its constitutionally required duty of counting and verifying the votes.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to my very good friend, the distinguished member of Georgia, Mr. Carter.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in opposition to this effort to move forward with impeachment hearings. What happened on Wednesday, January 6th, was nothing short of pure anarchy. And those individuals who broke the law should be held accountable for their actions. They should be prosecuted to the highest extent of the law, and they should be put in jail. This was one of the saddest days of my life last Wednesday, Mr. Chairman. Our thoughts and our prayers are with the police officers and other law enforcement who carried out their duties on that tragic day, including Officers Sicknick and Liebengood. Right now, our focus should be on healing our nation. With so many upset and dismayed at the actions of last week, it's our responsibility to chart a path forward to subdue the growing animosity and find ways to heal our country. Unfortunately, I don't believe this resolution will achieve those goals, especially 7 days ahead of the inauguration. This is very serious and concerning effort during such a tense and fragile time in our country. I urge my colleagues to consider how this will further entrench people during such a tense time. I cannot support this.
The gentleman will suspend. All members are reminded to wear face coverings while on the floor. All members and staff should be wearing face coverings while on the floor. Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Doggett.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
For years, Donald Trump has honored thugs worldwide who suppress democracy. For months, with a daily diet of lies, he has made clear his refusal to accept any election in which he was not the winner. After failing completely in his repeated attempts to intimidate both Republican election officials into committing fraud and Republican-appointed judges into ignoring our Constitution, he made a desperate attempt last week to block the final election count and prevent the peaceful transition of power essential to democracy. Trump basically attempted to overthrow the government, to violently overthrow the first branch of government, this Congress. Like his deadly reaction to the pandemic, He totally bungled the deadly attack. Both his frenzied, riotous mob and his congressional enablers were defeated. America, we did stop the steal. We stopped Donald Trump from stealing our democracy and imposing himself as a tyrant. Today, we not only demand accountability for his gross misconduct, but more importantly, we declare to the next Trump-like aspiring tyrant, not in America, we love our democracy too much. Our capital is scarred, but our democracy survives. Violating his sworn duty to protect and defend our Constitution by seeking to violently overthrow the government.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Massachusetts
If this is not impeachable,
the gentleman
nothing
from
is.
Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I advise the chair I have additional speakers on the way, but they're having a difficult time, so I will reserve my time.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro.
Gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized for 1 minute.
Just 1 second.
On November 3rd, the American people voted overwhelmingly for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to serve as President and Vice President of the United States. The country was about to enter a new era with great hope for change. And yet, with a decisive mandate and majority, the President used untruthful claims to end the completion of a constitutional process of collecting the electoral votes, making Joe Biden President of the United States. Not accepting the will of the American people, the President unleashed the most horrific violence that overwhelmed the security forces at this Capitol, which was overrun for the first time since 1812, putting the lives of so many at risk. Indeed, a day of infamy. This impeachment will be viewed as a transcendent vote where all will be judged. Vote to impeach the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserved. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
I continue to reserve, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserved. From Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Castor.
The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to urge the impeachment of Donald Trump because the attack on the Capitol and the Congress was the single most depraved betrayal of the U.S. Constitution ever committed by a president. The traitorous incitement of an insurrection demands not just impeachment, but removal of from office immediately. Violence during the transfer of power, Confederate flags, anti-Semitic paraphernalia desecrated this Capitol, so accountability must come swiftly. We must act with the same resoluteness we showed in the early morning hours after the insurrection, where we ensured the will of the voters was effectuated. Donald Trump's defilement of this Capitol will not stand. It demands impeachment now. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserved. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Gentleman from North Carolina.
Excuse me, 2 minutes, Mr. Speaker.
For 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. These articles charge incitement. Once before, the House impeached a president of the United States within a week of the alleged offense. That was President Andrew Johnson, days after he removed Secretary of War Edwin Stanton in 1868. Over 50 years later, the Supreme Court declared unconstitutional the Tenure of Office Act that President Johnson had refused to obey. In other words, the House was not only hasty, it was wrong, punishing noncompliance with an unconstitutional law. At least when that occurred, the constitutionality of the law in question was unsettled. Here, however, an angry House majority races to impeachment in direct violation of settled constitutional law. Again, the articles before the House charge incitement to insurrection. They do not specify inciting language. The law is well settled. Quote, what is required to forfeit constitutional protection is incitement speech that specifically advocates for listeners to take unlawful action. The violence last Wednesday was abhorrent. Perpetrators should be prosecuted. Those responsible for security decisions held accountable. Congress can disapprove, revile, condemn, even censure, but you cannot, consistent with the rule of law, punish that which the Constitution's First Amendment declares protected. If you do it, the violators of duty to this Constitution, however angry, will be those who vote for this article of impeachment. It is not Mr. Green's article of impeachment. It is incitement. And the Constitution is settled on that point. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Minnesota, Ms. Omar.
Gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, let us not mince words about what happened last week. It was a violent attempt to interrupt our democratic process. It was a targeted blow at the most essential process that makes us a democracy. It was a direct and specifically incited by the President of the United States. For years, we have been asked to turn a blind eye to the criminality, corruption, and blatant disregard to the rule of law by the tyrant president we have in the White House. We as a nation can no longer look away. The president not only incited an insurrection against our government, but has in word and deed led a rebellion. We cannot simply move past this or turn the page. For us to be able to survive as a functioning democracy, there has to be accountability. We must impeach and remove this president from the office immediately so that he cannot be a threat to our democracy. I stand ready to fulfill my oath of office, and I challenge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to do the same. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserved. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a New York Times article published January 9th entitled, "Our President Wants Us Here, the Mob That Stormed the Capitol." It's another example of why our country cannot risk even one more day of Donald Trump.
Without objection.
I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. And, Mr. Speaker, last week, Congress was under siege by a mob motivated and directed by the President of the United States. Our Vice President was the target of that mob. Members of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, were targets of this mob. And I witnessed, for the first time in my life, Americans fighting Americans, all at the behest of our own President of the United States. And as Americans, we can do better. And I will vote for impeachment today for our nation, for our children, and for our grandchildren. And I'll be voting for impeachment so that America will once again be the shining city upon the hill whose beacon light guides freedom-loving people everywhere. I urge my colleagues to join me and vote for impeachment. With that, I yield.
The gentleman yields. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserved. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
May I ask the gentleman how many more speakers he may have?
Whenever the gentleman is prepared to close, we'll close. We were hopeful that one of our speakers could arrive, but difficult circumstances, they're just having a hard time getting here.
I think we have exhausted all of our speakers, so I'll yield to the gentleman.
Is my friend prepared to close?
Yes.
Then I'll close, Mr.
Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time. Speaker, I want to thank you for presiding over these difficult proceedings today. I want to thank my good friend, the distinguished chairman of the Rules Committee, and I want to thank everybody that came to the floor, had something to say at an important moment. And I think the debate, while spirited, reflected the civility and decency of the institution that we're all privileged to be part of. And I'm very proud to have been part of it, very proud of all the members and the manner in which they participated. I want again to thank the staff and thank those who kept us safe in the process, particularly the Capitol Police. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I oppose this rule and I oppose the majority's actions today. After the traumatic events of last week, the majority should be taking steps to unite us. Instead, they are only dividing us further. They are rushing to judgment, in my opinion, and bringing up impeachment after failing to follow any meaningful process whatsoever. No hearings have been held, no witnesses heard, no process or opportunity to respond was provided to the President. No members had an opportunity to review or amend this article before it came to the floor. This is hardly the way the House should undertake such a serious act. Mr. Speaker, there's still a way to unite the country. Let us look forward, not backward. Let us come together, not apart. Let us celebrate the peaceful transition of power to a new president rather than impeaching an old president. And let us affirm and reaffirm with one united voice that the House does not rush to judgment on the most consequential action we can take. We deserve better than that, Mr. Speaker, and the American people deserve better than that. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues, as they reflect on this minute and we move into our next stage of debate, to remember that we're all privileged to represent a great and a good people who've gone through a horrifying and tragic time, and that we owe them the opportunity to reflect, and we owe them our best efforts to bring together. I know people on this floor feel very passionately about this subject with different points of view. I honor each one of those points of view, and I honor the people that voice them. And let's remember when we're through this that we're one people, that we have one purpose, that we're free through the grace of God and millions of brave Americans over centuries of time, and we will remain that way, and we will move forward together once we settle this debate. With that, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote no on the previous question, no on the rule, no on the underlying measure, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and let me thank my friend, the ranking member of the Rules Committee, Mr. Cole, for his friendship and for the way he conducts himself in this chamber. I know he has great respect for this institution. Mr. Speaker, it is impossible for me to fully capture the reverence that I have for the United States Capitol. You know, I worked on these grounds starting back when I was a college intern working for Senator George McGovern back in 1977. No relation. Great last name. But since that time, I have done everything from working as a staffer for Congressman Joe Moakley of Massachusetts to being elected to the United States House of Representatives myself. But that internship will always be a high point of my life. Coming here for the first time, walking these hallowed halls, and seeing the glory of American democracy up close. The idea that someone would incite an out-of-control mob of homegrown fascists and domestic terrorists to desecrate the People's House fills me with a deep sadness for our country. The contempt that these people had for our democracy and our freedom fills me with horror. And what Donald Trump did, encouraging them, fills me with rage. Rage, not just on behalf of all of those serving here, but all of those who work in these halls. And I'm talking about the reporters, the cafeteria workers, the custodians, the clerks, the parliamentarians. I go on and on and on. And the staff, the Democratic staff, the Republican staff, the nonpartisan support staff, who were terrorized, some hiding under their desks and barricading in their offices. I was in the Speaker's chair the day this unfolded, and many of the people who are sitting up there now were present at that time. What a horrifying thing for anybody to have to experience. Now, some of my Republican friends have been trying to lecture us about unity here today. Unity, after they voted to overturn a free and fair election in the United States of America, but also preaching unity and not acknowledging that for 4 years, many of them gave oxygen to Donald Trump's conspiracy theories, to the big lies. They turned the other way in the face of racism and bigotry and how he embraced some of the most intolerant voices in this country. They just let it go. You know, I will remind everybody here that words have consequences. And ignoring words that are wrong also have consequences. You know, what happened would never have happened if everybody stood up in unity and called out the president when he was not telling the American people the truth, when he was pushing a big lie. We will never have unity without truth and also without accountability. This week in Congress, we saw the best of us and the worst of us. Some of my colleagues have shown that they will defend this president no matter what he does. There's nothing that he could do that would dissuade them from all-out support. But some are standing up and doing the right thing under tremendous pressure, and I am proud of that, and I honor them for their courage. This impeachment resolution outlines the truth of what Trump did. It is time that this Congress now holds him accountable for his words and for their devastating impact. Last week, we took an oath to protect this nation. As history calls on us today, I pray that we all have the moral clarity to uphold it here today. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
The question is on order in the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, on that, I would request the yeas and nays.
Pursuant to Section 3S of House Resolution 8, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device.
All right, everybody, they are officially tallying the votes, the verbal votes. The ayes appeared to have it. The Republicans asked that they tally the votes, so that is what is going on there. We're going to keep a very close eye on it here on News Now from Fox. Pilar Arias here with you. We do have a news alert to bring you from Southern California. This is from our sister station, Fox 11 Los Angeles. I will make a graphic here as soon as I can for you, but I wanted to read to you the latest information that we are hearing. Crews are battling a greater alarm fire in Venice, later dubbed the Oceanfront Fire. The structure broke out inside a commercial building at 800 South Oceanfront Walk in Venice at around 6:15 this morning. They are 3 hours behind us there on the West Coast, just past 10:30 here on the East Coast. So this fire has been going on for more than an hour, but it's really interesting to me that they are actually dubbing this with a name, the Oceanfront Fire, because usually only wildfires get names, but I guess when it's literally on the oceanfront, as you see the beach there and the shore, and you see that the property is on Oceanfront Walk there in Venice, that's the latest. But again, crews are working a commercial building fire dubbed the Oceanfront Fire in Venice, California. When and if I learn any new information, I will let you know right here on News Now from Fox. We're going to listen in on New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio here in just a few moments. I do know that Stu Mundell is in Skyfox here in Venice Beach, though, so I do want to pull up the audio for just a bit, and eventually I will double box the House rule impeachment vote for you here in just a few moments on News Now from Fox.
Like it is very close to the structure that is on fire. That is all well within code, and with the materials that they used on this building, probably probably are going to save that home. Right now, LA City firefighters on the roof of that building, this has been their concern since this fire started, to keep that building safe. They have been doing an excellent job. You can actually even see some of those trees right there. I heard from the PIO, there's 108 firefighters from LA City firefighters, LA City Fire Department here on scene. They continue to battle this fire, but you can see a lot more white smoke, not a lot of active flames, but again, this happening out here in the Venice area, 800 block of Ocean. And again, started as an outside fire, possibly from a homeless encampment that spread to this building, an older structure. That structure took off very quickly. LA City firefighters bumping this up to a second alarm. I'm not sure if it made major emergency, but definitely a second alarm fire. You can see that they went into defensive mode very quickly, meaning that they had no firefighters inside that building, just basically attacking it from the outside. And the biggest concern was the residential homes right next door, very close by. As Vinny gets a little bit of a wider shot, you can see some of that foliage right there, and of course that one home right up next to the building that was on fire. Now, at one point, right now, we've got firefighters on that roof right there, but earlier on, they were just using the ladder pipes, basically cooling that building down, keeping it from catching fire. Again, this all happening in the Venice area of California. This is the 800 block of Ocean in the Los Angeles area. LA City Fire Department here on scene. And you got to give them kudos for keeping those homes safe and getting that fire out. No injuries is what we're hearing at this time. No injuries.
All right, so that's the latest. We're going to head on over to New York City now to listen in on Mayor Bill de Blasio providing the city's latest COVID-19 updates.
Committee to look at these issues that have proposed different ways forward. There's well-established advocacy on both sides when it comes to what to do about G&T. So what do you think you'll learn or hear that you don't already know or that you haven't already heard? And with all the pressing issues facing schools, just given COVID and the response that that's going to require to help kids catch up this year and next, why is it important to dedicate more time to this issue?
Thank you, Christina. I'll start and I'll turn to the Chancellor. Look, do we know everything there is to know already on any topic? No, I assure you, there's always good ideas and possibilities that we haven't thought of. But there is, you're right, already some good proposals on the table. What we need is that engagement process. We need to work with parents, with CECs, with PTAs. We need to work with the PEP. We need to work with elected officials. We need to get out there and really talk through the possibilities and figure out the one that makes the most sense. We want something sustainable. It's really important to get it right, but I think the reason that this becomes so timely additionally is the Chancellor and I are fully committed to doing something very different starting in September with a more individualized approach to education, with a greater use of digital options to augment the work of our classroom teachers. We actually have a moment where it's really right to reevaluate how we help talented students, because instead of saying, oh, we're just going to help a very small number, we now can do something much bigger. I want to just offer these numbers because they are staggering, and I think all New Yorkers should hear them. How many kids do we have in kindergarten typically? About 65,000. How many apply and take the G&T test? About 15,000. So right there, 15,000 means 50,000 kids we're putting aside right there. So now 15,000 take the test, of whom 2,500 get a seat. Do you really believe out of 65,000 kindergartens in the city, only 2,500 are quote-unquote gifted and talented? That's ridiculous. Many, many more have all sorts of gifts and talents, and they deserve opportunity, and we need to re-envision this system. So since we're going to be doing more individualized instruction anyway, what better time to rethink this approach? Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Christina. I would just also remind folks that we did have a very...
All righty, we're going to break in again to the House floor because everyone is keeping a very close eye on the impeachment proceedings today. Ooh, looks like they are back and counting the votes. So I'm going to pull up the audio again from New York City.
What good instruction, good pedagogy looks like for enriching students and serving students that are academically exceptional. The jury's not out, but this is a public school system. So as a public school system, we must engage the public in the decisions that will impact children in the public school system. And what the mayor and I are talking about is engaging in a process to do just that, to bring people to the table, to have a conversation about what the research says, to understand what historically folks have wanted in our school system, and through that engagement process then reach a point where we take the research, we take the best practices, we take the input that's been given, and everyone has at least a piece of that conversation when public policy is made. We think that that's a much better approach rather than just saying the research is clear, so this is what we're going to do. Again, it's a public school system, so the public should be involved in the conversation around the policies that are implemented.
Thank you.
The next is Andrew Siff from WNBC.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and everyone on the call. With regard to the cancellation of the Trump Organization contract,
Some of you are going to see a 2-minute commercial break.
Legal authority to do this. All kinds of contracts are binding unless there is a confirmed crime or confirmed improper activity. So before any of that is even formally alleged, how are you so confident?
I'll start and I'll turn to our corporation counsel, Jim Johnson. Andrew, we all saw a crime committed live on TV. Come on. It's quite clear the President of the United States committed a criminal act. He directed an insurrection against the United States Capitol, period. That's criminal. That's treasonous. Clearly, the Congress understands that and is acting on that right now. We are not going to do business with the Trump Organization. We are not going to do business with a criminal organization. If I said to you, should we do business with the mafia, you'd say no. Unfortunately, at this point, the Trump Organization is just another organized crime organization from my point of view, because the president, out in the open, you remember when he said he could walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and get away with it? Well, he literally incited a riot and thinks he's going to get away with it. He's not going to get away with it. We're not going to do business with him. Jim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our decision is based on the contracts, which clearly give the Parks Commissioner the authority to terminate a contract actually at will. Several of them are at-will provisions, as long as that decision isn't arbitrary or capricious. The evidence is clear that he invited criminal conduct. We don't have to wait for a standard of proof that you would require at a criminal trial. We have very strong provisions, and we are prepared to and will, right now, we're acting on them. With respect to the golf course, it's even more clear because he's now entered into default. One of the reasons that he was given that contract was his ability to track major golf tournaments. With the cancellation of his contract with the PGA last weekend, we're entitled to and are invoking our provisions, our right to declare him in default. So the language is clear, the conduct is clear, and our basis for moving forward is well-grounded.
Go ahead, Andrew.
As a follow-up, a few minutes ago, Eric Trump provided NBC News the following statement: "Yet another example of Mayor de Blasio's blatant disregard for the facts. The city of New York has no legal right to end our contracts, and if they elect to proceed, they will owe the Trump Organization over $30 million. This is nothing more than political discrimination, an attempt to infringe on the First Amendment, and we plan to fight vigorously." Any response to that?
Sure. I really don't listen to the words of treasonous people. Eric Trump's right there with his dad supporting acts of treason against the United States of America. So what's clear is we have the legal right to act, and we will prevail. He needs to take into account that what happened here was criminal. What happened in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol, the president's efforts to direct an insurrection against our government, is criminal and treasonous. We do not do business with criminals, period.
All right, everybody, I just want to let you know I'm keeping a very close eye on what is happening in the U.S. House of Representatives as a result of the Capitol chaos that happened 1 week ago. They are voting on the rules, the procedural votes ahead of the impeachment vote. So that's what's going on the left-hand side of your screen. You're seeing some congressmen and women coming up and talking about their colleagues' votes and the like. So that's what's going on there. Keeping a very close eye on it while continuing to listen in to New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Organization. You've always said your team couldn't find any legal basis to do so. The company is now run by Donald Trump's sons. You know what Eric Trump just said about your decision to cancel the contract. Is the city ready, if it comes to litigation, to pay those $30 million to the Trump organization to cancel those contracts?
Juan
And
Manuel.
also, aren't you convicting the president already of an alleged criminal offense?
Juan Manuel, again, you saw the crime live on television. I don't understand why you're taking Eric Trump's word for the truth. The bottom line is the President of the United States incited an insurrection. He incited an insurrection. Just listen to those words. This is not business as usual. And our law department looked at the situation and was quite clear that we could act, and we're confident that we will prevail. I'm going to let Jim Johnson speak to it. But the fact that Eric Trump, of all people, suggests that they're going, every time the whole Trump MO is to say they're going to win. Well, guess what? They're not going to win this time. We are going to prevail. Go ahead, Jim.
The sense of irony is pretty strong here. Last week, they trampled on the Constitution, and this week they're trying to stand on it. You have the First Amendment right to say many things, but just as you can't yell fire, the First Amendment does not protect your ability to yell fire in a crowded theater. You are not, the First Amendment doesn't protect your ability to incite wrongful, harmful, and lethal conduct. It is in the best interest of the city to terminate these contracts, and the provisions of the contracts give us strong grounds to do that, and we're taking them.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, are there any extra security measures being put in place from now to Inauguration Day by the NYPD? Any concerns of possible Trump rallies, protests, or violence in the city?
Juan Manuel, I've been asked this now 3 days in a row, and I'm happy to answer it every time. I think I was asked on your station on Monday. Same exact answer. We are looking very, very carefully at the situation. There are no specific and tangible threats against New York City. If anything emerges of any substantial nature, I'm going to make sure we announce it. Our focus right now is on the problems elsewhere. Obviously, Washington, D.C., central concern, and we're supporting the Washington, D.C. Police Department and their efforts. And then the threats posed to state capitals around the country. Those look very real. But no specific threats directed against New York City. We are absolutely ready, if one emerges, to move the resources in place to address it quickly.
The next is Marcia from WCBS.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Marcia. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I want to follow up on the questions that you've been asked about President Trump. You just a few minutes ago, compared his organization to organized crime and to the mafia. Those are really strong charges. Do you really believe that?
Yeah, we saw him live on TV incite an insurrection. I mean, what do you got to see to be convinced that someone's acting in a criminal fashion? It's treasonous. And I'm sorry, that's absolutely unacceptable. It is the right comparison. Go ahead.
So I wonder what the symbolism is for New York City to slam the door on the Trump organization and slam the door on somebody who's been one of the most famous or infamous native sons to New York City.
He's disgraced in his own homeland. I mean, just thoroughly disgraced. He's been rejected now twice overwhelmingly by the people of his own city, overwhelmingly. And now he commits an act of treason and incites an insurrection. I mean, come on. This goes beyond any notion of tragedy and goes much farther than that. This is someone who unfortunately has, for New York City, he has dishonored New York City by his actions. And he also chose not to live here anymore. He's a Florida resident now. Look, what we saw in Washington, D.C., I don't think in a million years, Marcia, you or I could have imagined a president of the United States doing that. It was literally beyond anything we've seen in our history. We should never, ever see it again. It was treasonous and unacceptable. And he is being treated as a treasonous individual by leaders of both parties, by companies all over this country. People are speaking out. New York City will not do business with someone like that, period.
The next is Amanda Eisenberg from Politico.
Morning, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Hey, Amanda, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you. So I spoke with a 79-year-old yesterday. She lives in Manhattan. She took the subway to Bushwick to get vaccinated. When she arrived, she had an ID number and a confirmation for her appointment. It turns out that that information came from the state and not from the city who was running that site. So she was in line. They moved her to a different line. And again, she's 79. And the people who are working the site from the city encouraged her to go home and re-sign up. She insisted that she wait since she had the appointment. 3 hours later, she was able to go home with a vaccine, but no follow-up appointment for her second dose. I know Dr. Choksi spoke a lot about some of the problems yesterday. I wanted to bring this to your attention and get your feedback on how do we avoid these things happening, especially with people who are older and might not be able to wait in line for 3 hours and have to stand on their feet.
Yeah. First of all, I'm very sorry that happened to her, and we absolutely want to fix that. It's the first I've heard of anything like that, Amanda. That's not acceptable. We need to fix that. And if you'll be kind enough to make sure Dr. Choksi's team gets her contact info, we will definitely make sure she gets her appointment for the second shot. Thank God she did get the shot eventually. But no, look, if there's any problem like that where someone legitimately signed up and we need to just cut through the red tape and get them the shot, we will get them the shot. That's the bottom line. And we'll look to see if there's anything we have to fix in terms of the systems. But what I'm hearing overwhelmingly is people are getting to the vaccination centers and getting their shot at the time and around the time when they were scheduled to do so. But I don't want to see someone like that turned away, obviously. We have to be smart and just get someone in need the shot they need. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. And I also wanted to get back to this the COVID variant strain that you mentioned earlier. So we have 2 new cases in New York City. Are you hearing from your health department to sound the alarm bell about having people stay closer to home, maybe not travel to their office, with the understanding that if this variant were to spread, something like what happened in the UK could happen here, where we have hundreds or thousands of people with this variant and the hospitals get overwhelmed again?
It's a real concern, Amanda. I'll start and I'll turn to Dr. Choksi and Dr. Varma. I'm very concerned about this variant. This is why we need a travel ban immediately. Again, I appreciate that finally, and I've called for this months ago, there's federal action on ensuring that anyone who gets on a plane has a negative test. But in the case of the UK, that's literally not enough. We need those flights canceled, and we need a travel ban until the situation is greatly improved. I am very concerned about this variant. You know, we're just at a point now where we have an opportunity to turn the corner because of the vaccine, and now we have this new challenge. I would absolutely urge people who are vulnerable to be very, very careful. And I'll have Dr. Choksi talk to this. Anyone who's older, anyone who has pre-existing conditions should really limit their movements, should only do the most essential things. With this new variant, it's another reminder, if you're one of the folks who's vulnerable, don't take chances. Let's get you vaccinated, but until you've received both shots, Don't do business as usual. Stay safe. Stay close to home. Dr. Choksi, then Dr. Varma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Amanda.
All right, everybody. Again, they are doing procedural votes on the House floor, and we were keeping a close eye here on News Now from Fox. But we're going to depart New York City and head to Washington, D.C., where Mayor Muriel Bowser is providing what she calls a situational update. So, of course, the president declared a pre-emergency declaration for the District of Columbia. So she's updating on the Capitol chaos, the inauguration next week, and also coronavirus updates. So I do want to listen in live here on News Now from Fox.
Columbia, and on Monday, that declaration was declared. We also requested that the Department of Homeland Security extend the National Special Security Event period, and they have done that. That period now starts today instead of on the 19th as it was originally planned. We asked DHS to coordinate with the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, the United States Congress, and the United States Supreme Court to establish a security and federal force deployment plan for all federal property. You have heard various announcements from those agencies about the stepped-up deployment and security plan that will be, as all special security events are, led by the United States Secret Service. And as we will, you also recall that I asked the acting attorney general to direct the FBI to provide an intelligence and threat briefing on a daily basis throughout the special security event time period, which is ongoing. And I also requested that the Secretary of the Department of the Interior cancel any and all public gathering permits in the District of Columbia and deny any future applications during the special event period. Those discussions we continue with the Department of the Interior. On Monday, I also extended the pause that we announced just before the Christmas holiday, or I called it the holiday pause, and this will extend through the inaugural period. So certain phase 2 activities related to our COVID response remain paused through Friday, January 22nd at 5 a.m. And during this time, we are asking residents to avoid our central business district and only travel to the central business district if you have essential business. Yesterday, if you were downtown or around the Capitol, you likely noticed the additional preparations which have begun, and that includes around the inauguration perimeter, the White House, the mall, the Capitol, and other key parts of downtown. Individuals entering the perimeter may be subject to screening and asked to describe their essential business, so be prepared to do that. We also want to amplify this information that we received from the Secret Service beginning 6 a.m. on Friday the 15th. All parking garages in the restricted zones will be blocked off. Any vehicles still in the garage or loading zone at 6 a.m. Friday must be remain there until after the inauguration. So plan to move your vehicles. Businesses that need to receive deliveries will be advised of an off-site screening facility. Further, residents and businesses between 19th to 14th Streets Northwest and K Street to Constitution Avenue are already being advised of these restrictions. So more information about additional closures will be forthcoming. While we know this is very inconvenient for our residents and businesses, I want to say thank you for your cooperation and flexibility. Clearly, we are in uncharted waters, and it is very important that we work with all of our partners to secure to secure these events and secure these parts of our city. Certainly this time last year, we didn't expect to be in this situation. Even last week, we didn't expect to be starting this early. So we want to advise neighbors to please follow for updates. And information can change, so it's important to have these updates. So text INAUG 2021, INAUG 2021 to 888-777 to get the latest updates from DC government. Further, as we've said and we've seen, this year, we've had to do some extraordinary things to keep people safe as it relates to COVID and public safety. We just showed an example of what it looks like when people do these things voluntarily. At Times Square, just this past New Year's Eve, we got to celebrate with the ball dropping, mostly virtually, as New York City secured the perimeter around the normal square of festivities. We're asking people to do the same thing as it relates to the inauguration, for Americans to enjoy it virtually and to follow the instructions of the Presidential Inauguration Committee, the Secret Service, and all of us. So now, before we take questions, I want to say something briefly about vaccinations. And Dr. Nesbitt will be available to answer questions. We were very excited to see so many of DC seniors sign up for the available vaccination doses that we have this week. And because of that, that desire to get inoculated from this virus and get back to their lives, the 6,700 appointments we had available for this week were all filled up by midday on Monday when they became available. In one sense, that's a good thing, but it also demonstrates the scarcity of the vaccine. So I want to advise everyone that you should not go to a vaccine site if you do not have an appointment. Obviously, crowding is not good now, and it will not help you get an appointment. Instead, you should go to vaccinate.dc.gov to register or to receive an alert, or call for an appointment when appointments become available again, and we will continue to make that phone number available. We are making appointments as the district receives doses from the federal government. Dr. Nesbitt mentioned already that we may be able to make additional appointments from seniors in the previous group who was in 1A later in the week, and we will continue to advise you of that. Okay, so with that, we'll take your questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, for Dr. Nesbitt, are vaccinators required to collect data on race of people who they vaccinate? And if so, will that data be made publicly available like Maryland and Virginia?
Sure. We plan to make that data available. I think we mentioned to you all last week that as we were working with our vaccine providers to improve their reporting, we wanted to ensure that as we make that data available, we would be able to do it without so many caveats in terms of what percentage of the data was missing or was not accurate. Last week on Friday, I issued an administrative order to clarify that all vaccine providers in the district must report an administered dose within 24 hours of it being administered. Since the issuance of that order, we have had improved reporting from our vaccine providers, so we hope to be be able to make that data available to you all soon. We've seen remarkable improvement. The two providers where we don't still have timely reporting into the district's immunization information system with the demographic information that we need are the two providers that are part of the federal long-term care partnership, which is currently CVS and Walgreens. So we'll continue to work with them to get that timely reporting into our system.
So the vaccinators are required to
That is
report?
correct.
Okay.
It is a requirement as part of the provider agreements that they sign with us to collect data on race, ethnicity, age, gender, key demographic information that is critical for us to be able to understand if there are racial and ethnic disparities in terms of access to the vaccine, as well as in terms of uptake to the vaccine to help us with better equitable distribution, as well as messaging in terms of reaching the most vulnerable populations.
Thank you. And then can you explain the district's rationale for going straight to vaccinating people who are 65 and older when Maryland and Virginia have the age set at 75 and older?
Sure. So there are a couple things that I think people should know is that there's the CDC has an advisory committee for immunization practices that deliberated looking at data, national data, in terms of the populations that had the greatest risk for morbidity and mortality or risk of illness, severe illness and death from COVID-19. When reviewing that data, it was found that individuals, when looking at national data over 75, had a greater risk in terms of hospitalization, severe illness, and death. When we look at our data in the District of Columbia, and when we looked at our population in terms of the number of individuals in our population by certain age groups, we made the decision to lower that age to 65 to be able to have a plan that made sense for us locally. And now that group is a sizable group, 86,000 individuals. But in terms of how we're rolling out our phases, we thought it made sense for us in terms of the morbidity and mortality we're seeing as low as the age of 65, given the disproportionate disease burden in certain racial and ethnic groups for individuals at that age level.
Thank you.
James?
Dr. Nesbitt, on January the 21st, Johnson & Johnson will go before the FDA in terms of getting its emergency authorization. The difference between Johnson & Johnson and the other two, and you probably know this, is that it's a single shot vaccine. How would that fit into the mix in terms of what you have here now in the district?
Wonderful. Excellent question. Before I answer that question, I will make sure to remind people, we want you to get the vaccines that are currently available. So we hope and are optimistic that people are not anticipating the approval of any specific vaccine or waiting for any particular vaccine to receive approval in the U.S. So if your group is eligible for vaccination, we want you to move forward with vaccination. Our plan and what we know is that there are several types of vaccines or vaccine providers or companies, drug companies, pharmaceutical companies who have products under development, who plan to submit to the FDA for approval for use in the U.S. So as our vaccine programs in the U.S. mature, we hope to have more vaccines available for use in our programs. The two that are currently available are mRNA vaccines that have storage requirements. One has to be at ultra cold storage temperatures below 90. The other one still has to be stored at cold temperatures, not as cold, and they have to be thawed. And once they are thawed, the whole vial has to be used within 6 hours. The other vaccines, as we understand.
All right, folks, we are stepping away from that Washington, D.C. update, taking you out now full to Venice Beach, California here. You're getting a great shot of Sky Fox right now, showing the firefighters here on this roof as they continue to battle this fire here. And this is just within feet of the Venice Beach shoreline that is happening right now, has been going on for several hours right now. The fire broke out outside, just inside a commercial building at 800 South Ocean Front. For those of you that know Venice Beach, that happened around 6:15 local time there. LA City firefighters responded to the scene and went into a defensive mode. Right now, flames from the fire could be seen through the roof of the commercial building. Investigators said the fire was believed to have started from an outdoor fire at a homeless encampment that extended into a one-story commercial building. The fire became heavily involved and threatened two nearby structures there. And this is what we are seeing right now. The scene from Sky Fox right here on NewsNOW from Fox. If it's live breaking, happening in the now. There's a good chance, it's happening on NewsNOW from Fox, everybody. We appreciate everyone joining us here today. It's setting up to be just another busy day here on NewsNOW from Fox. In about an hour or so, we'll go out to the U.S. Capitol for the actual debate of the one article of impeachment against President Trump. We will feature that for you in full and in its entirety when that does get going, about an hour away, maybe a little bit more than that here. But we're going to keep staying on this shot here for you. Sky Fox showing you just a great vantage point now. Several ladder trucks are up, and you're seeing the great job there by the firefighters doing all that they can and trying that this fire doesn't extend to other buildings right now. No injuries have been reported at this time. That's what we like to hear, and we're hoping that the firefighters stay safe as well during this time here. It's always amazing to see the progress of these firefighters that are able to do in such a short time here. Earlier, we were showing you the fire. We had it in double box, and now you're seeing not as black smoke as there was maybe just about 40 minutes ago. So that has changed. Now we're in that gray and white smoke that we definitely want to see here. So they're getting a good handle on it. You can see from the firefighters, they're now entering, looks like wanting to entering part of this building here to get a better scope of what they have to deal with here. Obviously, this building is at a loss. We have no control over Sky Fox right here, but we're hoping that they could maybe zoom out just a little there for us. Kind of give us a little better scope of what we are seeing right now. But this is what we do here on NewsNOW from Fox. We'll try to take you to events as they're happening in the now. Live, raw, and unfiltered as always. What you're seeing here is the roof, obviously. It's no longer there. And but we're seeing a great job here. No more black, thick smoke here, dark smoke. Nope, it's all white now, as the fuel is pretty much out here for this fire here. You're not even really seeing any flames anymore. That's a great job there. You're seeing a lot of onlookers right now taking a look at the action that is happening there in Venice Beach, just a stone's throw away from the shoreline there. I mean, you can see the beach right there. Sky Fox doing a great job, as always, for us right here, showing us everything that is happening. We know the homeless situation in California is at record levels, and this is an unfortunate part of society. But we'll see what the investigation holds as to why this fire started there. But you are watching this all unfold live right here on NewsNOW from Fox. It's being dubbed the oceanfront fire right now. See some parts of the media there as well, taking in the fire from a safer distance. So from this vantage point, you can see why firefighters had to go defensive in the early stages here of this fire, because, well, they had the other buildings there so close, and they did a great job of not letting it spread, which it very easily could have. So this one looks just about wrapped up here, so that's a great job there. You just see a little spark ups right now that they are seeing. They want to get those all out, but they're pretty confident right now. You can just see by their body language from the firefighters right now. You see they're continuing to put the water on these hot spots that continue on right now. Just joining us here on News Now from Fox, we're about, I would say, an hour to hour and 20 minutes away from what we will do is take you back out to the Capitol in just about an hour, 15 and 20 minutes there. That is where they will actually debate the one article of impeachment against President Trump. Make no mistake about it, he will be impeached today. They do have the votes. Democrats are in the majority there in the House. And where it will get very interesting, from the reporting that was happening last night, late last night, it could be a toss-up when it hits the Senate, or when it does hit the Senate there for the trial there. There's reports there that Fox News is reporting that Mitch McConnell, not a happy camper with President Trump. So we'll see how that all unfolds and what happens, because basically, if you got Mitch McConnell upset and he's thinking about saying, you know what, I will vote to impeach you, oh, the dominoes would fall very fast as other Republicans would get in line. But we'll see how that will shake out. Right now, we are around this fire here, major fire, continuing, but almost out there. Great job by the Venice Beach teams there and LA Fire as well. You're always watching live right here on News Now from Fox, worldwide as always. For you, what we'll do right now is take a quick 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. We're going to find all sorts of events here for you throughout the day. And of course, we'll be your destination for the impeachment debate that will be happening. We already know the outcome, but we will take that live there for you on News Now from Fox. Let's show everyone what it looked like earlier this morning here. This is from our sister station, Fox 11. You can see what it looked like earlier today when those flames were really indeed ripping out there of that building. So that's what it looked like earlier today. And then we'll go back out live here for you on News Now from Fox, show you the aftermath of what we just saw right there. Thanks, everybody, for joining us back here on News Now from Fox. Great job of the fire department here as, well, looks like this fire is almost out there now. The fire department just working on some hot spots that they're going to continue to look at. But look at that. I mean, that was so close to the beach right there, and that's why it was called the oceanfront fire there. Great job by the fire department there for keeping it contained there to just that building. Before we go here on News Now from Fox, I do want to show you what it looked like earlier in the day there when it was really, really ripping there. So that is the look from earlier, and that's why the fire department always doing a great job. They had a big task ahead of them, and they were able to knock it down there. All right, let's show you now. Let's go around here what we are seeing on our feeds right now. Live look at the market here, pretty much flat for today, just down about 12 points in the red. We'll continue to look at it throughout the day here for you on News Now from Fox. Don't forget about our big event of the day there. This is a live look on the U.S. House floor right now, where they are actually debating the rules to get into the actual debate for the impeachment of President Trump here. I know it's a lot of things that they got to do before they actually debate, and that's what we're seeing right now. They had to make the rules. Now they're voting on the rules. Once they get that squared away, then we'll get into the debate. We're expecting that 12:30 Eastern sometime, roughly, so maybe just an hour away here. We're also keeping a shot U.S. Capitol, the hallways here. You never know when a congressman or man or woman will come up and want to talk. And we'll bring it to you as soon as that happens here for you on News Now from Fox, always worldwide here for you. What we'll do here, I want to take I got the point here. I'll take another commercial break here for you on News Now from Fox. And what we will do then is go back to Washington, D.C. We're still getting an update there on security for next week's inauguration. I know. It's only a week away. But before that happens, we are now dealing with the second impeachment there of President Trump. That will be happening later today.
Yes.
Just a couple of questions here, one for the chief and one for the mayor about the inauguration. One, how many National Guardsmen will officially be in the area? We're just getting a couple of conflicting reports, and I'll throw this out there too. Mayor Bowser, recent reports show that you were just the target of an attack on January 6th. That just came out today based on some court records. One, do you have any plans to beef up the security around for yourself? And two, can you just comment on the fact that there has been a threat against you?
I'm going to ask the chief to comment.
Sure.
The chief's responsible for my security.
Sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for the questions. The first one with respect to the National Guard. Those numbers, the final numbers, because this has been designated as a national special security event, the final numbers will be provided from the United States Secret Service. I think you can expect to see somewhere upwards beyond 20,000 members of the National Guard that will be here in the footprint of the District of Columbia. With response to the mayor's security, obviously the Metropolitan Police Department and me personally, we're responsible for that, but we do not discuss the specifics of the mayor's of her security detail. Thank you.
Okay, Michael?
Mayor Bowser, in addition to what you've already proposed in terms of planning for the inauguration, there's also been some other pretty extreme measures that have been floated. Governor Hogan alluded to stopping Metro service and a broader DC lockdown. We've also heard about restrictions on hotels and even stopping Amtrak service. Are there any updates on these measures or anything else you're considering?
Michael, thank you for that question. And we should ask DC residents to expect some impacts to transportation. That includes Metro, that in addition to the roadway closures or perimeters that have been set up in DC, the service may recommend some other changes to the transportation network system, including roads around the city. And when those things have been determined, we will let you know. That is not, to use the overused word, that is not unprecedented. In the planning for the first Obama inauguration, for example, there were, I would say that our law enforcement was responding to a couple of things in that case, as you all know. It was historic inauguration, over 1 million people attended, so there was a huge public safety issue with just the sheer numbers. And I also think there was a high level of threat against the incoming president. So there were a lot of different transportation impacts in and around DC, to include transportation, to include approaches to the district as well.
And how about hotels?
The hotels we are working with, our hotels are very concerned. First of all, those that are in the perimeter will have some access concerns. There are some safety concerns for their personnel as well. We will have a lot of people in town just supporting the security apparatus, and so we are trying to understand and balance the need for housing with also our encouragement that people not travel here. So we haven't made any determinations yet, but we're trying to give a lot of advice to our hotel operators. I think prior to the 6th, there were a couple of hotels that decided to close their operations for the safety of their personnel and the integrity of their business operation. I think you'll see some hotels do that. I think before I came in, I saw a notice from Airbnb that it would limit its bookings. So I think there are going to be there may not be a one-size-fits-all approach to that question.
Okay, but there might be an update later.
There could be an update.
Okay. And then per your request to the Department of Interior regarding the gathering permits, you talked about public health as one reason those will be prohibited, but how do you balance that with Americans' guaranteed First Amendment right to gather and protest?
Well, Michael, as you know, we have dealt with this question throughout our response to the pandemic. We have not issued any special permits from the district for parades, for block parties, for anything that would encourage people to gather, even outside on the street. We have no ability to say to somebody, you can't have a protest. As I have been roundly criticized as if I issued permits for protests throughout the summer. We never did. But we also know that is, we can't stop it with a local ordinance or mayor's order.
And then following up on the question about the threat you received, can you go into any more details? Have you received any other threats of that nature? How many have you gotten, and how are you dealing with them?
I really don't have more to say, Michael, than what the chief said around how we deal with them. I will say I get threats a lot. I don't know the number up, and if MPD thinks that it's actionable, then they will implement whatever measures they think are necessary.
And then a question for Chief Conte. Are there any updates on MPD's investigation into Brian Sicknick's death?
No public updates at this point. Again, he was taken to our DC Office of the Medical Examiner. A autopsy was conducted there, but no other updates for the public at this point other than what we've already presented.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question from me, Mayor Bowser.
Yes.
The eyes of the country are on DC right now and probably through the inauguration. And you've made frequent national TV appearances. Some of your recent news conferences have been broadcast nationally as well. What do you see as your responsibility and goals as DC's mayor in addressing a national audience?
Well, my first responsibility is to address DC residents and businesses and our DC audience, and that's my first responsibility. I do feel a responsibility to also communicate directly with the American people. I have things that are within my direct authority as granted to me by DC residents and our home rule charter. But the larger role I have is to convene people, bring people to the table, people for whom I have no direct authority, but I'm using my power as mayor of the best city in the world to convene people and to make sure that every piece of information I have that I can share. So that includes our federal partners, and that I know that term can be kind of amorphous in a way. So that's the administration, that's political officials, that's regional officials, and that's our own local stakeholders as well, and it's our residents and businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
One for Mayor Bowser and one for the chief. Mayor, are you satisfied? You put a lot of requests to the federal government. Some of them they have agreed to, some they haven't. Are you satisfied with the level of coordination right now between the local and the federal planning of this, particularly when it comes to notifying residents? I get that it's a fluid issue and whatnot, but just are you satisfied with the coordination and the notification to the local public with all the closures and restrictions that are going into place? You know, people drove into, I mean, you saw what happened with everybody trying to get here this morning, you know, what it's like getting around the city. I'm just wondering if you think the coordination is to your liking.
I think the advance notice part of things, Mark, we typically would do differently, but I realized that that type of notice would be impossible this time when I asked for the National Special Security Event time period to be extended. And it may not be clear what that means. The events of January 6th, the insurrection of the Capitol, those protests did not fall into a national special event category. The inauguration of the president does, which puts in place an entirely different command and control structure within the federal government. So we are very confident about that type of coordination, as we have been with other national special security events. It's a whole different structure in extending the time period so that that structure could be in place earlier in case of the threats that we have heard from the FBI's bulletin about these protests starting earlier and starting at locations all around the country. I think we will benefit from that.
And Chief, if I could, an off-topic question unrelated to the inauguration, but your department released very interesting data on carjackings comparing 2019 to 2020. And the spike in carjackings is remarkable, more than 140% increase over 2019. And if you break it down by ward, and you look at Ward 7, or I guess police district, if you look at the 7D numbers compared to 2D, it's really off the charts. And we're getting reports that there may have been somebody carjacked on Military Road yesterday at Rifle Point, and then in Georgetown on 30th Street, there were multiple in the same day. What can you tell us is going on and your advice to people to stay safe?
Yeah, we've had a number of carjackings in years. Thank you for the question, Mark. And I think it's important for the public to be aware of that. Some of the carjackings that we have had we're seeing as a result of people who are leaving their cars running or delivering food, that kind of thing. But the ones that really scare people, you know, like the ones that we've had the other day, the 1500 block of 30th Street and some of those others, I'm at least happy to report in those cases that there has been an arrest for those 3 cases, and we're seeking several other arrests related to that. They were found later on by 5th District officers after they committed the robberies over there. But just in general, I think from a law enforcement standpoint that one of the things that I intend to do is really kind of develop a task force with our federal partners to really take a different approach to carjackings. I think that the public certainly has to be aware of it, but I think with respect to how we approach it with our prosecutors, et cetera, there's not 100 people that are out here committing carjacking.
All right, everybody, we were getting that live update there in Washington, D.C. I do want to take you, though, back out from the East Coast. Let's go out to the West Coast right now. Here's a live look at how this fire really is wrapping up there. Great job by the fire department, but we're getting a live update.
Challenges, right the potential for structural compromise. There, part of the roof came in on our firefighters, so that's why we went in a defensive posture, continuing to fight the fire, but most importantly, making sure our firefighters are at a safe distance. Our specialized resources that we have on scene are our USAR, heavy rescue, and arson is also here so that we can conduct an investigation to determine how this fire started. There have no reports of injuries at this time for our firefighters nor civilians. And other than that, we've gotten several different reports that this was a law office and then Snapchat, and then now it's vacant. So we're still looking in to confirm what that building was and making sure that all the information we have is accurate.
Talk to us about how the preliminary theory as to how it started, because earlier LA City Fire did put out, they believed it started as an outside fire in the homeless encampment.
When we first arrived on scene, you could see some of what appeared to be an outside fire, but we're still looking into that with our arson investigators to confirm. I don't want to speculate at this time until I talk to my arson investigators.
A neighbor told me that just 2 days ago there was another fire at this same encampment. Do you know anything about that?
A lot of times, particularly with the weather changing, you'll see warming fires, cooking fires, and to some people, that's a fire. It might be something that our folks can just show up and put out. So we get several of those type calls, but in this case, I haven't heard that there was a huge fire in this area, but we have had warming fires and cooking fires in this area.
Any idea how large that encampment is, people-wise?
Well, from what I can see there in terms of numbers, I couldn't give you that, but I saw anywhere from about 15 to 25 what looked like to be tents and other membrane structures in that particular area.
We also heard that it could be a possible marijuana grow house. Did you hear anything of that?
Well, when you look on the outside, you can see a marijuana leaf and see some things that might lead one to that. But once again, we're not going to speculate. We just wanted to make sure, based on if that was a potential growing operation, we wanted to get the utilities off for the safety of our firefighters. So at this point in time, that's still under investigation. And when we have that information, we'll share that with you.
Is there any indication that it is a grow? I mean, have your firefighters seen anything besides that marijuana?
No, just the leaf and those things that are on the outside. And where it looks like it's more of like an artisan setup in that particular area. So nothing has been confirmed as of yet, meaning as a grow operation.
Can you talk about how challenging this was? Because the buildings here in Venice are just, they're right up against each other.
Well, the biggest thing we want to do is make sure we can find the fire to the unit of origin, or in this case, the building of origin, because as you can see, a lot of these are in very close proximity, and access sometimes is difficult to get to. For example, the way we set up a fire is the alpha side in this case. The A side of this fire is here on Oceanfront Walk. But the Charlie side, which would be the back side of it, that's a courtyard. So it's difficult to get back in those particular areas. So because of the close proximity and the high density in this area, we want to make sure that we approach this with extreme caution. But most importantly, our firefighters are here on a regular basis, always doing a pre-fire plan. So they're very familiar with how we need to address these issues.
No sprinklers, right?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know if there's any sprinklers, but we'll go in there and take a look.
Okay. And the roof did collapse?
But we did have a partial collapse of the roof right there where they had the air conditioning units up on top.
So good call to get those men and women out.
Absolutely. Our officers here running this incident, the leadership, did a great job. Remember, everything is safety first, but most importantly, we wanted to surround this incident and basically went to heavy streams, or what we call surrounding and drowning.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Getting the hang of this TV thing.
Good.
All right, great job there by the fire department there, getting that live update there as well. That's what we do here on News Now from Fox. Anytime we can see live events as they are happening, we always try to bring it to you in its entirety. Right here on News Now from Fox Live, Sky Fox aerials right now. I was just showing the aftermath there of that fire, as there now will be soon into investigation mode. But before that, they got to make sure that all the hot spots are out there. Now Sky Fox is showing you just so close to the beach right there. All right, let's take another 2-minute break here on News Now from Fox. For some of you, when we come back, we'll continue to monitor Capitol Hill right now. Live look at the hallway here as we continue to wait here for the live debate there of another impeachment effort. That's all coming up here next on News Now from Fox. All right, folks, we do love to do this segment that we try to get to you from Fox 2 Detroit. The doctor is in talking about vaccines right here on News Now from Fox.
Ending a policy to hold back second doses. Meanwhile, the head of the Department of Health and Human Services has granted Governor Gretchen Whitmer's request to allow the state to buy 100,000 more doses of Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine is made at a facility near Kalamazoo. Meanwhile, Beaumont Health facing unprecedented demand for the COVID-19 vaccine as we move into the second phase of vaccinating people. Since the rollout began, Beaumont has administered more than 22,000 doses. So this morning, the doctor's in. We're speaking with Dr. Justin Skrinsky, an internal medicine specialist who's been working on the front lines against COVID-19. Oh, the whole time, been in it for the long haul. Justin, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it's been almost a year now.
We have some good viewer questions. I do just want to talk about vaccine a little bit, and then we'll pick up the conversation after the break as well with the fellas. But can you explain to us, so Beaumont, and I know that Beaumont has increased its digital capabilities, or whatever you want to say, its technical capabilities to handle, because it's shut down the system, right? People calling and texting or jumping on the website to get this vaccine. So that's the first thing.
Yeah, and you know, it's exciting to us to see all of that enthusiasm in the community for vaccination. So definitely a very positive thing. But you're right. At the same time, we've had sort of this unprecedented interest in the vaccine. Unfortunately, we're limited on the supply side now. So we have the infrastructure. We've got a lot of that built out. We've got a lot of the manpower too. A lot of people very enthusiastic to be part of the process. But getting those doses is going to be a big problem.
And that's led to a lot of frustration. I mean, you have to, you're probably hearing it from all ends that, you know, we got the message, get the vaccine as soon as you can. And then the governor said, okay, anybody 65 and older can get the vaccine, but you can't get the vaccine.
Right, and there's kind of a couple different ways to do it. One is this sort of very staggered approach where you sort of very precisely control the number of people that can apply and sign up and so forth. The other one is sort of the floodgate approach where you just have very big cohorts of people, so big chunks of the population, and say, okay, well, everyone in this group can sign up. The thing is, you want to make sure that you're always giving every dose of vaccine you can. You never want to run into a situation where you're stockpiling those doses because, again, the vaccine doesn't cure the thing. It's getting that vaccine in people's arms. So there's a lot of logistic components that have to come together.
I do want to talk about logistics because that seems to be, and we predicted this when people talked about vaccinating our entire country is going to be really hard, and we're seeing that play out now in real time. What are the logistical concerns? So first of all, you have to screen people and make sure that they meet the criteria, which that's a hassle. But then explain to us getting a lot of people through, because it's not as simple as showing up and just throwing your arm out and getting a shot, right?
Absolutely. And you think about a flu shot, you walk into a drugstore, you get your flu shot, you're walking out in a couple minutes. But this is much different. So like you said, you have to make sure that people are properly screened. You have to go through questionnaires in order to receive the vaccine to make sure that you're not one of those people that's more disposed towards something like an allergic reaction. You got to wait your 15 minutes as well. And then also one of the big things, too, is don't forget, you got to come back and do the entire thing again in either 3 or 4 weeks, depending on the vaccine you get. So the number of contacts you have with healthcare, the amount of time you spend, much more complex than the flu shot. And that can definitely explain a lot of the delays in terms of, again, getting these shots into people's arms.
And hospital systems, Doctor, are not meant to do this, right?
Correct. Yeah. So, we're not vaccination centers, and that's why you look at things like TCF opening up. I think those are positives. Beaumont has built out a lot of facilities as well, at first for employees, because obviously we have so many people in contact, frontline workers, and then eventually for communities. So you're seeing these larger areas be built out, but you're absolutely right. A hospital is not a vaccination center. And a lot of the times there's simply not the space or the resources for that at a hospital.
All right, I've got good viewer questions here. I think we're going to take a quick break. We're going to break in here, and then we'll be back with Dr. Justin Skrinsky to answer your questions and many more. So stick with us. And welcome back to Dr. Justin Skrinsky. Guys, we'll get to you guys in just a minute, but I do have a couple questions because, Doctor, you've been working the front lines at Beaumont with COVID-19. Johns Hopkins saying that 24,000 people died nationwide in the first 9 days of 2021. So 24,000 deaths from COVID-19. What are you seeing?
Yeah, fortunately, at least at Beaumont, we're experiencing a bit of a valley now. We had our peak kind of around Thanksgiving, and I'd like to credit that to people doing the right thing, staying home, distancing, all the measures that we've been asking people to do, and making some sacrifices of the holidays. So fortunately, we're kind of in a brief reprieve here.
Good. Okay, that's good to hear. Let me just get in a couple of viewer questions. I'm allergic to shellfish and penicillin. Can I get the vaccine?
Yeah, so there's no specific reactivity to that. If you look at the way the vaccine's made, it's got these lipid nanoparticles, so these kind of microscopic oil droplets that it's suspended in. People think that might be one of the sources of allergies. If you have a predisposition towards bad allergic reactions, especially anaphylaxis, so that's the really serious one where people might carry something like an EpiPen. It's not a contraindication to get the vaccine. You might still be able to, but definitely bring that up. And that might mean you might need a bit more kind of surveillance when you get it.
Doctor, why do I still have to wear the mask after I get the required doses of the vaccine?
Yeah, that's the huge one. If we have masks, then why do we need the vaccine? If we have a vaccine, why do we need masks? The point is that, masks are not completely effective. They're an excellent tool, one of the best tools that we have. And in terms of vaccines, the big question is, can people who get the vaccine still transmit the virus? And there's some promising data right now that indicates that maybe no, that they don't. If that's the case, then we can have reasonable assurance after enough of the population's vaccinated, maybe even by the end of the year, we might be able to see life sort of back to normal with no mask. That's definitely the hope. But for now, we just don't have those answers. And instead of taking chances, we say definitely still keep going with the mask even after vaccines.
All right, Alan?
Yeah, hey, doctor, so you said earlier we don't want to stockpile the vaccine when we have it. I know I've heard the term the first dose is first policy thrown out a little bit. I'm hoping you could maybe clarify what that is. Is it the policy? Does this policy differ from state level to federal level? Would you clarify that for us?
Absolutely, and that's a very tricky and somewhat controversial question. So the idea is, do you give away all of your vaccines and say, you know what, we just want everyone to get their first shot? We're not so much worried about people coming back and having availability for that second shot. The other strategy is to say, well, hang on, this is a 2-shot vaccine. We got to make sure that we keep enough doses in reserve. So the way I understand it right now is that The idea is you want to kind of give vaccines as they're being produced, as they're rolling out. And again, from how I understand it, manufacturers are confident they'll be able to produce vaccines to supply that second dose once that comes around.
Good. Derek?
Doctor, the people that have gotten the vaccine so far, medical workers, first responders, teachers, and now this week we're talking about grandparents and elderly folks. What advice do you have for them to interact with people that have not yet gotten the vaccine after they do get it?
Yeah, so I would say right now, nothing would change. And again, that might change with our understanding of how effective the vaccine truly is. And again, that big question about can you still transmit the virus even after being vaccinated? That's still the big question. So as of now, I would say, nothing really changes. Especially after about a week or so after the second dose, that's when we find that immunity is more or less optimal. So after that, you can be reasonably sure that you're not going to get seriously ill. But again, can you ferry that virus from one place to another without getting sick yourself? Unclear. Hopefully not. And that would, make for a mask-free, maybe even fall at the earliest. But for now, we just don't know.
Dr. Skrinsky, just as of right now, real quick for our viewers to understand, Beaumont, biggest health system in the state of Michigan, what's your vaccine supply looking like?
So right now, as I understand it, we have a pretty good vaccine supply. I don't have any numbers on hand, but in terms of at least covering our frontline workers, our COVID units, many of our workers, including myself, have already gotten their second shots.
But I mean, for people to call and make appointments for regular folks, yeah.
Yeah, I see. Unfortunately, I really don't have those numbers on hand, so I would definitely reach out. We do have waiting lists if supply is short.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. Be patient. That is what we're being told with all of this. Get vaccinated, but be patient in the process. Dr. Justin Skrinsky, thank you as always. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
All right, here's what we know. The federal government is working to speed up the distribution of vaccines, ending a policy to hold back second doses. Meanwhile, the head of the Department of Health and Human Services has granted Governor Gretchen Whitmer's request to allow the state to buy 100,000 more doses of Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine is made at a facility near Kalamazoo.
And that was the Dr. Ian segment there from Fox 2 Detroit. Let's continue on right here on News Now from Fox. Live look right now on the U.S. House floor where they continue to get their votes in right now for, this is to the actual rules of the debate that they will be having in we think about 20 minutes, everyone. So we'll have you focused on that in just moments. Let's listen in because they still are voting by proxy.
Closed to anybody but members and staff. To put them right outside the House chamber to only apply to members and the staff that have floor access is nothing but political theater. There are dozens of Capitol Police officers that are manning these magnetometers like they're working at an airport. And the good men and women of TSA, I don't mean to say anything bad about them. They do great work. But the Capitol Police officers who are there should be out along the perimeter making sure that it is safe, because that is where the threats that we've been told are going to come from.
And final question, tell me about your thoughts on impeachment happening.
I think it's another piece of political theater. I stood up for the Constitution and my responsibility under the 12th Amendment, and I certified the Electoral College votes that came in from every state in the nation. Just like I protected the Constitution there, I'm going to protect the provisions that our forefathers put forth when they put impeachment into it.
designated by Ms. Wilson pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Wilson will vote yes on H-Res 41.
Does the gentleman from Nebraska seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Bill Rackus of Florida, pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Bill Rackus will vote nay on H-Res 41.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Virginia seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Mr. McEachin pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. McEachin will vote yes on H-Res 41. And as the member designated by Ms. Porter pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Porter will vote yes on H-Res 41.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Michigan seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Ocasio-Cortez pursuant to House Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Ocasio-Cortez will vote yes on House Res 41.
Just be back here by like 12:15.
And welcome everyone here to News Now from Fox as we continue to welcome our new viewers from around the country and around the world here. Live look right now at the U.S. House floor where we are just now moments away from beginning the debate on the second impeachment of President Donald Trump. We are learning that it should be expected within the next 5 minutes or so. So we will 5 to 10 minutes. So we will bring that to you as soon as it gets going right here on News Now from Fox. But I do want to take you out to some other news of the day here. This was moments ago in California here. Earlier this morning, take a look at the fire in Venice Beach that was happening. This is Sky Fox aerials from earlier today, and you can see, wow, a massive fire that was just pouring out of that complex. Now we're going to be getting an update here from our sister station Fox 11. Gigi Grassetti joining us here live on News Now from Fox with the very latest. Gigi, thank you for joining us, and can you tell us just exactly what you know?
Well, good morning. This has been quite the firefight. Let me get out of the way and give you a live look at this building that firefighters, LA City firefighters, believe was empty when the fire started just after 6 o'clock this morning, local time. Now, right now, the preliminary theory is that it started at a homeless encampment that surrounds the building, according to firefighters. It may have been what they call a warming fire. That's a fire typically seen during the colder winter months in homeless encampments. sense that this one spread quickly to this building, and it became a defensive firefight, and that basically means they had to pull firefighters out, and it was a good call because just moments after they got firefighters out, that roof collapsed. Luckily, no one was injured. Now, this is Venice Beach, and I'm going to ask my photographer if he can spin around and just show you how close the ocean is. We're on a oceanfront walk, and just literally less than across the street is the Pacific Ocean. So this is very, ironic when you've got this fire with next to so much water. Lots of buildings here, one next to the other. No one has been injured. The homeless encampment was cleared out. Firefighters telling me they saw about 15 to 20 tents surrounding the building, and neighbors tell me that there was another fire at that encampment just a few days ago. But again, we're live in Venice, California, right on the beach. Luckily, no one injured, but this building, which may have housed a popular social media site at one time, is a total loss.
And Gigi, can you let us know and the viewers just how the firefighters were able to do such a great job on not letting the other the other buildings catch fire there?
Well, they called what they call a greater alarm fire, and that brought resources in from all over Los Angeles, over 108 firefighters on the scene. And let me add to that, arson investigators just arrived too, and they're officially going to try to determine how exactly this fire started.
All right, Gigi Grassetti reporting live here for us on News Now from Fox. Thanks so much for the insight and the update there as we were bringing that fire to you earlier today. We appreciate you joining us here today on News Now from Fox. As we continue to roll on right here, let me just set up the day that we have here for us, as we are looking like this could be really a busy day here on News Now from Fox. We're expecting in the next 10 minutes or so that on the U.S. House floor, they will begin the debate. It's supposed to be a 2-hour debate on the impeachment of President Donald Trump. It looks like House Democrats, they already have the votes here. So really, this is just going to be really just a moment here for 2 hours of debate back and forth. But we will know the outcome. President Trump will be impeached once again. That will be history in the making. You got to go back to the late 1700s. There's only one other time that a elected person was impeached twice. Now, this will be the first time that a president will be impeached twice, and we'll be bringing that to you. History in the making right here on News Now from Fox. We're covering it for you from every angle right here. Live look at, we have congressmen and women. They are getting back onto the House floor. We are just moments away from this moment, so we'll be bringing that to you in full as soon as it gets going. We're going to use this time to take a quick 2-minute break here for you on News Now from Fox as we load up the commercials here and get ready to take you really from gavel to gavel today here on News Now from Fox.
On camera, and then we'll go back to the structure. I'm going to cover it. I can pan off real quick. I can pan off. I'm still got to cover it. We have like all that good video.
I know, but I need to leave.
You going to distract the whole thing here?
I can't go straight, so I can just come in here.
Don't point that mic in that truck.
Give me a minute. All right, let's try this. 3, 2, 1. LA City firefighters still on the scene here as the building continues to smolder. We see pockets of active flame. Meanwhile, arson investigators are also here, trying to determine exactly how this fire started. It happened just after 6 a.m.
Welcome back, everyone, here to News Now from Fox. We are worldwide here for you. About 5 minutes away now from U.S. House to get back onto the floor here. That's where they will be debating the second impeachment of President Trump here. I'm just going to go and read off some of the reporting from our Fox's Chad Pergram, Capitol Hill reporter, always does a great job on Twitter of really providing insight that a lot of people you just can't get from anywhere else but Chad Pergram here. So this is some of his reporting that I'm just going to read off here for you on News Now from Fox as we take a look here at the live look on the House floor. You know what? I'll change it. I'll change this Capitol Hill shot just so we could get all those numbers out of the way. Those numbers that you were seeing weren't actually the numbers for the actual impeachment. That was just to set up the impeachment there to get it onto the floor there so they can debate there for 2 hours. This is from Chad Pergram saying that Representative Hoyer, this is the response that he got from if the article of impeachment would be sent tonight. Representative Hoyer, a Democrat from Maryland, saying, I don't want to say that because I don't want to speak for the speaker. We had a conversation about 2 days ago. My thinking is it will be sent over as soon as possible. So that is what we are looking at right now. Let me just give you a little bit of what could happen here. We know on the House floor, everyone, that President Trump will be impeached. The Democrats are in the majority, and they are going for it. That's why if they weren't going for it, we wouldn't even be in this situation. But after that, it's going to get, well, we don't know what could happen here because as Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, there's been reports from Fox News and other outlets saying that, well, he's not too happy with President Trump, and we don't know which way he would go or when he would bring up the actual Senate trial against President Trump. There could be a possibility where it could happen after the inauguration, where President Trump would have an impeachment trial as not the sitting president, but in that capacity. So we will keep an eye on all of the movements. There's still a lot to go through right here on News Now from Fox, everybody. But let me just continue to read out just a little bit more of the reporting here. We're now about less than 5 minutes away from when we expect the Democrats and Republicans to begin the 2-hour debate This was earlier today on the rule debate teeing up impeachment. A Democrat, Representative McGovern, saying the House is debating impeachment, quote, an actual crime scene. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for the president. We're taking a live look right now inside the Capitol. Hard to believe that just 1 week ago, that's when the riots and all the chaos was happening in this very rotunda here. But that's how fast a week can change things. Now dialed up is the impeachment process for President Donald J. Trump here. This is where we are at. I'm going to take another quick 2-minute break here for you just because we have the time to do it and we don't want to take it during the actual debate.